across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And good afternoon. Yeah, thank you to Alex. Welcome to the home of common sense. As there is, after all, a bit of common sense out there today. Following a day of local election results, and they are still trickling in, Labour is facing a significant setback. I think that puts it rather mildly. Early results from English councils show that reform is gaining ground in traditional Labour heartlands. That's absolutely key to the overarching story here. Despite this, Keir Starmer has insisted he's not going to walk away. Well, it might not be his choice. Is this the beginning of the end of Keir Starmer? Details to come. Other party leaders have been responding to the election. Reform UK's Nigel Farage has claimed Labour is wiped out, while the Tories, Kemi Badenoch, sees signs of renewal. Not sure where, Kemi. Liberal Democrat leader Ed Davies said his party is very bullish. And Green Party's Zach Polanski declares two-party politics is dead and buried, so he says. We'll bring you the rest of the big results, of course, as they trickle throughout the course of the afternoon. We have Wales and Scotland, of course. They're the big ones to keep our eyes on. They are beginning to come in. I've no idea why in the 21st century it takes this long. I mean, it was 10 o'clock last night, for God's sake, 15 hours ago. Do you think we better start counting the results? Yeah, I think so. 0344 499 1000. That is where you will find us. So, here's the question. Is it the beginning of the end for this man?
I think it's absolutely clear that the electorate are fed up with the fact that their lives aren't changing quickly enough. And this has been going on for a very, very long time. I think that we were right to emphasise to the country the difficult inheritance we had, the challenges we face, but we haven't done enough to convince people that things can improve, their lives can get better, the hope. And I'm not going to walk away from that challenge. We made a number of calls which were the right calls in terms of stabilising the economy, investing in our public services, and not getting dragged into the Iran. But we also made unnecessary mistakes. And my job now is to set out the steps that we will take to bring about the change that people want and deserve.
He really is rather awful, isn't he? And I say this not as a personal attack on him. As a Prime Minister, the kind of toolkit that you need to be one, to be able to pronounce, announce, declare, respond, all of that, they're just not in the Starmer toolkit. And he drifted there a little bit into why it was a little mumbled, stumbling, kind of nonsensical moment of basic concession but not concession speak of some sort. Last night election results, of course, have delivered the rarest of British political treats. Everyone, it seems, is unhappy, just in different ways. I mean, I say everyone, except one, of course, because Reform are surging, as they might say themselves, a common sense uprising. And by everyone else, by the way, as a mere protest vote. That seems to be the line. It's a protest vote, isn't it, from on Reform? Look, couple of things to that. This is not a protest vote. And secondly, even if it was, protest votes have a rather curious habit of becoming very real. Labour, meanwhile, seem to have discovered that the not the other lot option card that they kept playing in 2024 has now well and truly expired. It only gets you so far. Keir Starmer now wears the expression of a man who revised for the wrong exam paper. Is it the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer? He looks thoroughly prepared, but for a very different question entirely. The Conservatives, not to be outdone, have also managed to disappoint. Kemi Badenoch must be wondering how one inherits a political mess and still gets blamed for the smell. But she's in positive news, it seems.
We need people to know that hope is coming. The Conservatives have to come back because, my goodness, this country needs us. We are coming back to fight for our high streets. We are coming back to fight for hard-working people. We are coming back to fight for businesses. We are coming back to fight for veterans, for parents, for farmers. We're coming back to to stamp out anti-Semitic hatred on our streets. We are coming back to deliver a stronger economy. We're coming back to deliver a stronger country. And we are coming back to get Britain working again. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, she's very good. I mean, certainly has a bit more life in her than Keir Starmer. And then, of course, there's Nigel Farage grinning like a man who just put a bet on chaos and watched it come in at very comfortable odds.
But I think overall what's happened is a truly historic shift in British politics. We've been so used to thinking about politics in terms of left and right. And yet what Reform are able to do is to win in areas that have always been conservative, but equally, we're proving in a big way we can win in areas that Labour have dominated, frankly, since the end of World War I.
Since the end of World War I. There it is. It is indeed Reform's day. The Greens, by the way, quietly picking up a couple of seats, adds a sort of final twist amid all the noise. Someone remembered the future exists. All in all, a night where the electorate spoke clearly, just not in a single coherent sentence, but for Reform, it is irredeemable. It's undeniable. The evidence is there. Not a protest vote, but certainly a complete sea change, a game change of how Britain does politics. If you loathe Reform, or you loathe the Green Party, that's not the point to any of this. Think outside of that. Try and be a bit objective. The two-party system is well and truly dead. Or is it? Does everyone always revert to type, come a general? 0344 499 1000. I'm going to throw that question out. Is this the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer? Let's get a word from David Wooding, columnist at The Sun, political journalist of many, many years. I mean, the Lib Dems used to say when they did well somewhere, they go, it's the end of two-party politics. Is it, David?
Well, I think it probably is. When the Lib Dems came out of the SDP, of course, which was in the early 1980s, when they were talking about breaking the mould. I do think that Nigel Farage has really broken the mould because, first of all, he delivered, or he was part of the team which delivered Brexit, something he campaigned for and achieved. And part of the problem that the two-party system has got now is that Brexit was a manifestation of people's anger with the two parties being the same and doing nothing, and so they voted for Brexit. When Brexit didn't deliver what they wanted, or the parties in power didn't use Brexit to deliver what it should have delivered, they've now moved back to Farage again, said, right, well, you're the man for us, and I think that's what's happening.
So is this at the expense of Labour or at the expense of the Tories? Bit of both. What do you think the big takeaway on that?
A bit of both. I mean, of course, the hard left and the extremists of different varieties have all moved to the Green Party now, which has sort of reinvented itself under Jack Walensky. That is clearly taking votes away from Labour and allowing Reform in some cases, but Reform is also taking votes away not only from the Conservatives but from the Labour Party, because the working class people want to see benefits cut because they resent working and seeing people lying in bed all day. They also resent the massive illegal migration in this country, which both parties have been behind.
Keir Starmer talking there in that clip we played, Dave, sort of suggesting, you know, the usual kind of fare that you would get from a leader. We've had a bruising, we've had a kicking, I take full responsibility, not a great day, but I'm not walking away, we carry on, onwards and upwards kind of thing, stiff upper lip stuff. He's not very good at that stuff. It's not his strong point. You know, Boris could have probably sold that same message, but with more optimism, and perhaps people would maybe think, well, maybe he's not done yet. But Starmer, I mean, we're asking that question, is it the beginning of the end for him? It's hard to see how he can hang on, particularly with people like Ed Miliband apparently urging the Prime Minister to come up with a resignation plan.
Absolutely, and that story shows that behind the scenes, perhaps more than one cabinet minister has had a quiet word with him and said, well, what do you think, boss? Is it really time to start thinking about yourself and what you do now? And he must know deep down in his heart that he will not be leading Labour into the next general election. He can't possibly do that. He must know that. Once you get this far behind, it's like falling 4 or 5 goals behind in a football match. In the second half, you know, really, you lose the will to fight and to play because you know you can't turn it round again. Even if you get a goal, you're not going to win the game.
Absolutely
and I think that's where he is now. So it's where he decides what his exit strategy is, because he will be gone by the next election, that's for sure.
We've got places like Hartlepool. Of course, this was a true red area. The MP's always been red. Peter Mandelson, of course, it was his neck of the woods for many years. And the council is now, it's a Labour lost, no majority there, but Reform gains there. You've got Newcastle under Lyme, Reform gaining that from the Conservatives. Stoke-on-Trent, Reform gaining that from the Tories. Tameside, Manchester, Labour lost there. Westminster, Conservative gain from Labour, which shocked a lot of people.
That was
I think largely, I mean, the Labour vote went down, didn't it? So the share of the vote wasn't good, but they'll take it.
You can look all over the country. There's loads of places I've spotted this morning. I mean, in the northwest of England, where I started my career, Wigan, the home of Lisa Nandy, real Labour red belt.
Yeah.
And you know, Reform have taken over that council, and that is huge. And then you go a bit further south from there to Halton, which is Widnes and Runcorn, which straddles the River Mersey, just a few miles out from Liverpool. That's got a load of Reform candidates elected.
It should be said, of course, these weren't elections in all parts of the country.
No.
In fact, most of the country didn't have, in England this is, didn't have council elections. So overall, Labour could say we've still got more councillors than Reform.
Yes, absolutely.
The Tories could make the same argument.
But nevertheless, this is a snapshot of the feelings taken in
and the future.
Key areas across the country and huge swathes of Britain. You're having it in Wales and Scotland as well, of course.
In terms of Wales and Scotland, don't ask me how this happens, Dave, but here we are in the 21st century and it takes a day to start counting, let alone finish counting. I mean, this is a disgrace. I'd fire them all over there.
Well,
get counting. You start 1 minute after 10, count.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was Sunderland, isn't it? That's usually the seat that returns quickest after Chris, what's his name's old seat? What was his name? Very British coup. The MP and author, Chris Mullin.
Chris Mullin.
Yeah, they could get it. They used to run, didn't they? They could get it back in about 2.5 hours, fully counted.
And you'd see them running with it.
You see them running with it. It was like the Beaujolais wine run.
Bit of excitement about the whole.
They'd get it done. And for some reason, both in Wales and Scotland, they don't actually start the counting until, well, it started a few hours ago.
No, I mean, it seems they all need to go to bed these days in these areas.
What's wrong with these wimps, these counting wimps? The counting people were very good before.
It was always done for security as well, because the votes were not left in any room overnight, locked up, even though they had been locked up. They were on the minute the ballot was closed, the votes were all counted, and nobody could argue.
And at the moment, we can't extrapolate much from Wales and Scotland, but Scotland is likely to, I think, for the 5th consecutive time, remain SNP, despite the fact they looked as if they were going down the pan about half an hour ago.
It looked like they were never going to get overall
somehow
control.
Bounce back. I don't know how the hell they did that. Wales is going to be more interesting, because for a long while there was a suggestion that Reform have this in the bag, and that kind of that sort of went. Belief was relegated a little bit in favour of Plaid Cymru. Either way, it's going to be a massive kicking for Labour, because Labour have never lost control
27 years since it was devolved, and it's been Labour every time. So that's a big loss for Labour.
So what does Keir Starmer do? Because he says, I'm not walking away from this. Presumably, he's not going to suddenly at 3:30 say, I'm resigning, but by the summer, I mean, is he still going to be there in a
by the end of the
time?
weekend? Because what sort of stories are going to emerge over the weekend? Who's going to write pieces in the Sunday papers? Who's going to come out and give an interview and say, and who's going to throw their hat in the ring? I mean, Wes Streeting and Angela Rayner both have more than 81 MPs backing them, so they could say, right, I'm going for this. Andy Burnham, meanwhile, doesn't have a seat, but if there was a leadership election, they would have to get him in. Whoever, if there was a challenge, they would have to get him in to be part of it.
But certainly at the moment, there's no way you can change this. this is reform's night, right? And this is a reform story.
Absolutely. And as Nigel Farage says, he's cleared Becher's Brook and he's on his way to winning the Grand National in 3 years' time. I mean, it's a big, big leap for him, this, because it shows that they can win seats. Of course, what he's got to do now is in the councils where they have got control, they've got to show that reform can govern. Otherwise, that will eat away at their popularity as time goes on. We've seen what's happened to the Greens with Zach Polanski over 2 weeks, where the anti-Semitism in the party and his various policies have all been examined and scrutinised. His supporters dropped off a little bit. They haven't done half as well as people predicted. They have caused a lot of damage to Labour, but they haven't picked up as many seats. I think, 30 or 40 seats so far they've picked up.
Indeed. Should be said, Becher's Brook, of course, is not as tall as it used to be.
No, it's all safe for the animals now.
just throwing that little bit of trivia in there. While you're with us, Dave, just before we go to a break, there's a couple of other stories we should get in as well. China apparently have been exploiting work from home people to spy on the UK. What's going on here?
Yeah, and of course there was a report out earlier in the week about the number of people in the civil service who were working from home endlessly. Some of them hadn't been in the office for 6 months. Thousands of them, 4,500 I think, hadn't been in for 6 months in HMRC alone, the tax office, and some of them hadn't been there, several hundred of them, for 2 years, and there were even more, dozens, scores of them, who hadn't been in the office and seen their colleagues for over 2 years. That's incredible.
How do you have a job and not go to work for 2 years?
Well, this all happened after Brexit,
COVID.
After COVID, and two big landmarks in our lifetime. After COVID, when people had to work from home, and they just had not written into their contracts, but it was custom and practice. What's happened here is, because of all the computers have been adapted so they can work from home, there's an Old Bailey trial just concluded in which a border force official of Chinese origin was spying for the Chinese, and he was able to log on to Home Office computers from home and glean information. Absolutely staggering.
Oh, that's extraordinary.
So not only does it mean that when you're ringing to try and get what's happened to my passport, or I need help with my Inland Revenue, and you're on the phone for 3 hours because you get through to somebody at home who doesn't have access to what you need. Not only is it not delivering for the people of Great Britain, it means that our security and the data is all at risk.
So you might work for a big company, you might work for the civil service, and obviously if you went to the Treasury or HMRC departments, they would say, oh, we've got these amazing firewalls and software packages. But when you work from home, you just take your laptop home, and no one really thought to kind of correlate the equivalent security in that respect.
Absolutely right. And of course, this has been happening with overtime. People have been claiming extra days holiday. What they do, they log off in their bedroom or wherever they're working from at 5 o'clock, but they leave their computer on, and then they go down and have their dinner and watch a bit of telly and have a shower, and then they go back and switch it off at 8 o'clock and claim 3 hours overtime.
I mean, did nobody think, sure, because if that was me, I'd think, no, they'll be on to that one. There must be. Because there were people that rested something on a key or something. Have you heard that?
That's right.
So it looked like you were depressing a key, a device.
Little devices that show that you're still working on your computer. So you can't
But not showing what?
No, that's absolutely staggering, really. And this is, I mean, it is happening in other businesses, but in businesses where profit and you have a manager who wants to drive efficiency and productivity, they would be on your back a little more. Whereas in the civil service, it's also lax and just
100%. We will talk some more to Dave Wooding in just a moment. Loads more still to come. There's only one really big story in town, of course. Is it the beginning of the end of Keir Starmer? You heard what he said. We'll play that clip probably a few times throughout the course of the show. It's worth listening to his words. And I thought it was quite telling, really, where he was stumbling away, really, reaching for obvious platitudes and saying very little other than, I'm not going to walk away from this. Well, that decision might well be made for him. We understand there are at least one senior cabinet minister in Ed Miliband who's apparently had a word in the shell like a Keir, urging him to plan a resignation in order to avoid utter civil war in the Labour Party. Your thoughts on that? Lines are open. This is Talk.
It just so happens that it's all "you're amazing."
Right. Paul White! Sir Lenny Henry!
I was face down and a dog sniffed my crotch. It was very, very embarrassing.
Staying out for the summer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 24 minutes after 1 o'clock here at the home of Common Sense. David Wooding is with us, columnist at The Sun and political journalist of many, many years. Of course, the eyes on this, Dave, are what does this say about a general election? Well, a general election is over 3 years away. I think we forget that. We get animated about the excitement and, for some, the relief that Keir Starmer might go. But, of course, the Labour government aren't going. They're going nowhere for over 3 years.
No, absolutely. And it's going to be very difficult for a Labour government to turn this around, never mind Keir Starmer, because whoever inherits what could be seen as a poison chalice still has to try and deliver. And the only way they're going to get into power, really, is by appealing to the left of the party, who want the party to veer more to the left. And it's clear from the voting today, or yesterday, that most people want it to veer more to the right. I mean, and the price for power that a lot of parliamentary Labour Party members are asking, the MPs, is to, for instance, get rid of Shabana Mahmood as Home Secretary. She's the only one who's actually showing a bit of...
Yeah, so why is that?
Fight.
Why? I mean, whether people are Labour supporters or not, but she does seem to be a bit of an outrider in her own party, and yet they're the ones that she could be more key to their success.
She's the one who's shown some ideas and some determination to try and stop the illegal crossings of the Channel.
Right, yeah.
And she's really cracked down hard on it and is showing a bit of fight in that area. But of course, the left of the party don't like that. As if it's almost like they're not looking at the results. They haven't paid attention to Brexit. They haven't paid attention to the rise of Reform UK, and they think the answer to that is to move further to the left.
Does anyone... I mean, it's extraordinary, people not catching up on reality and what is happening in the country. And you think the very people, seasoned politicians, experienced MPs that have been around the block, they've seen the trends, they know what it's like to be wounded, they know what it's like to be victorious, or to be in the middle somewhere. So they've experienced all of that. What are they not seeing in the Labour Party? Because they don't seem to know, do we go a bit more to the right, sort of Shabana Mahmood, or do we try to hoover up this potential threat from the Greens? Because this Zach Polanski guy, for reasons no one on planet Earth can fathom, is apparently meant to be a charismatic character. I mean, the dictionary definition of not being charismatic is Zach Polanski. However, he's dining out on the very antitheses of that, and seems to be breaking through, whatever way you want to look at it.
He does have some plausibility about him. If you see him on television giving interviews, even when he's coming under the cosh with some really hard questioning about anti-Semitism or other problems within the party, he does really come across in a relaxed and sort of plausible manner. However, that's not where Labour looking at you need to look at the voting in the local elections. They put on about 30 councillors, whereas the Reform would put on 400 councillors.
Yeah, so it's not quite an equivalent.
It's a difficult issue for Labour for no apparent reason, because Keir Starmer won power by standing as a middle of the road sort of Labour person, in the same way Tony Blair did. He's the only man who's won 3 elections in a row for Labour.
Correct.
And that was by standing as a moderate.
And that's sort of what the game Starmer
centre
was meant to be
and
playing.
we saw it with Jeremy Corbyn when he went to the hard left. Labour got absolutely pulverised. So why they think moving to the left now is going to save them is beyond me.
So I'm just looking at those images of Zach Polanski. It looks like a guy on day release, doesn't it? I don't know from where, but it looks like he's just been told, right, off you go, experience the big wide world, Zach. See what you make of it. It's not even his name, is it, Zach Polanski?
No, it's David Paulden, I think it is.
I think it is something like that.
Yeah,
all right, Dave. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And just finally, this one, away from the election results, but it's politically related. Ed Miliband's net zero obsession risks families using more heating, apparently, Dave, not less.
Yes, this is quite a twist to this. So he's got this £5 billion plan to insulate 5 million homes and make them more energy efficient. But there's a study carried out for Ed Miliband's own department, the Department for Energy and Climate Change, by London Economics, which is a consultancy, and the University of Cambridge. And they looked at it and said that if they did insulate all these homes in a way and made them more energy efficient, people would use more energy because they felt relaxed about.
So psychologically, they think everything's good.
And they turn up the stat, and the heating goes higher, and you burn more energy as a result. So careful what you wish for, right?
Careful what you wish for, indeed. Overarching question then, just to finish on, Dave. Scotland and Wales. What is it fair to ask you your prediction on where you think these two significant parts of these elections are going to finish up? The entirety of Scotland, the entirety of Wales. Who will be running them by the end of the day?
I think we'll probably see Plaid Cymru winning in Wales, which will be a massive breakthrough. And that will be more not because people want Welsh independence, but because they are disenchanted with Labour. And it's a very close one to call in Scotland, but obviously I think if you had to stick money on it, you'd probably say that SNP would be the highest party with no overall control.
The other headline from Wales, of course, is assuming Plaid Cymru, that I think the smart money at the moment says they will probably just inch it, but it's who's going to come second, isn't it?
Yeah, well, Reform will come second.
So probably. Reform comes second, Labour relegated to third
place, which is absolutely pulverising when Labour have been the in control for 27 years.
Because that's the big headline for Starmer, is that we can look at all these council seats and, you know, we've seen them come, we've seen them go, and, you know, midterm kind of election, I know we don't call it midterms, but, you know, literally in the middle of a term, put it that way, for purists, they often give the party in power a bit of a kicking, but Wales will be the kind of final moment where it'll be the bite from the inevitable predator that sees the extinction of Keir Starmer.
And all those Welsh Assembly members who've worked hard running the government there for the last few years will all feel really angry and embittered. Their voices will be heard. That will all transfer itself to the MPs and the cabinet ministers in Westminster, and that's where the pressure will start to, over the next few days, will start to get through to number 10.
And then a week today, Angela Rayner will be the Prime Minister. It's technically possible.
Of course it's possible, yes. You have to be... I really don't know whether that would be the solution for Labour, just kicking him out and bringing somebody else new in. It's like when you sack a football manager, you have to know who you've got lined up to come in.
True.
The problem is, I don't think Labour know quite who they can unite behind, and the person they probably do want to unite behind isn't even an MP, that's Andy Burnham. So it's a very difficult one for them to make the next move.
It's a whole set of political headlines with lots of people that aren't even MPs, like Burnham and Polanski, you know, and yet they're informing so much of this narrative in various ways.
And the only one smiling at the moment is Nigel Farage.
He'll be having a very cool and much needed pint or two this lunchtime.
I'm sure he will.
David, have a great weekend. Pleasure. David Wooding with us on the programme, song columnist, political journalist. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. Is this the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer? Your overarching response as well on what you sense in your own neck of the woods, the wider headlines that we've got so far from the election. Kemi Badenoch was in really buoyant mood, saying, you know, this is like, you know, not great, but there's a sort of sense of revival, I think she used that word, in the Conservative results. Or they did lose council seats, but they now run one at least that they never used to run, just. Thoughts on that? David Ball will join us, formerly of this parish, of course. He's the chairman of Reform UK. He's going to be with us later. And Sir Michael Fabricant, legendary Conservative MP of many years, now no longer in Westminster, but a man with always a good take on events. We'll chat to him in a couple of moments as well. And over to you. You can voice note us 0344 499 1000 or call on that number as well, or message 87222.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Loads of great messages coming in. This from Paul, who says, only 45% turnout in Exeter. Pathetic, says Paul. What is wrong with English people? This from Michelle, who says, in my town, 49% of the vote to reform. I would never have thought Conservatives and the Greens would tie here, both at 19%. Michelle says, who voted Green? Just looking at my country so far, it's mostly Reform, one Green. My county, sorry. Mostly Reform, one Green, and a couple of cons. Very interesting indeed. There's no way I've ever... I sort of dream of making that kind of ultimate documentary to really drill down on the reasons people vote. I think people have always voted on a feeling to a degree, as distinct from policies. It's the feeling, and sometimes the feeling an individual gives you. And politicians with big personalities are great at that, or politicians where there's a kind of an overt and a fairly glaring standout kind of element to them. So Zach Polanski, despite being constantly called this charismatic leader of the Greens, and he is about as charismatic as mince. I mean, let's be honest. He's not great. He's not, I don't think, an amazing orator. I'm sure he's a lovely chap and all the rest of it. But something about the Green Party has become cool with a certain part of the electorate. Now, it's obviously, invariably, it's a younger and certainly a more left-wing electorate. Now, I don't imagine if you went through some of their policies and you said to some of them, do you really believe this about the heroin? Going to make landlords illegal, but heroin legal? What kind of mad upside-down flipping world is that? I don't think many people would agree with that, but there is a feeling, if that's your sort of flavour of politics, green, sort of lefty socialist politics, then that would be something that's, yeah, there's a new coolness. And I guess reform benefit from that same thinking to a degree as well. Has the two-party system well and truly died? Was last night the moment that it was finally declared extinct. Let's speak with Sir Michael Fabricant, broadcaster, political commentator and former Conservative MP. Michael, good afternoon to you. You were, of course, you were an MP for about 507 years. So you've been around the block, you know what it looks like, you've been, your party and various others, you've seen people bruised, you've seen them jubilant, you've seen them just about going into the distance, into extinction, and then coming back again. We've seen all of this. What are you, bearing in mind of the trends that can happen in politics, Michael, what do you make of what you've seen on these local elections so far? Is two-party politics dead, or is it just on life support?
Well, it was utter carnage yesterday. I think that's the only word we can use. I'm going to get in trouble for using this analogy, but I will. I'm quite into war films and history programs about the Second World War, and it's like the initial sweep of the Germans into Russia in Operation Barbarossa, scattering everybody before them, although we know, of course, what happened in the end to the Russians. True. But Reform can feel pretty proud of themselves, actually, for the last few days and what's been happening. And fascinating, too, that with Angela Rayner, who was going round her constituency and saying that, which is untrue, by the way, that Reform is saying that they were going to privatise the NHS and that everybody would have to pay for using the NHS, it didn't make the slightest bit of difference. And people voted in her constituency en masse for Reform. So it's an interesting time. But I'm going to answer your question, though, because you asked me, is the two-party system over? Yeah. And I think for the short term, for the medium term, it probably is, yes. But I think in years to come, I think if we have a Reform government, they will disappoint, because all governments disappoint. And then I think providing the Conservative Party and indeed even the vestiges of the Labour Party can just hold themselves together, then we may return to that main two-party system. Well, but, you know, people have long memories, and it's going to take time for people to forgive the Conservatives and the Labour Party, I think. Well, I mean, the Conservative Party leader, Kemi Badenoch, was in very buoyant mood, despite also getting a bit of a thumping. Let's have a reminder of what she said earlier today.
We need people to know that hope is coming. The Conservatives have to come back because, my goodness, this country needs us. We are coming back to fight for our high streets. We are coming back to fight for hard-working people. We are coming back to fight for businesses. We are coming back to fight for veterans, for parents, for farmers. We're coming back to stamp out anti-Semitic hatred on our streets. We are coming back to deliver a stronger economy. We're coming back to deliver a stronger country. And we are coming back to get Britain working again. Thank you, everyone.
Now, I have to say, Michael, I thought that was a pretty good speech. I mean, considering the Tories also had a bit of a public lashing at the local election ballot boxes, buoyant mood, sounding positive, and the only way is up for Kemi Badenoch, she's saying.
Yeah, full of enthusiasm there and her supporters, and good for her. But, you know, the problem with the Conservative Party, and the problem indeed with the Labour Party as well, and maybe in years to come with Reform and Restore UK and the Greens, is you get factions. And she's on the same wing of the Conservative Party as I am, which is, I suppose you would say, on the right side. But you've got so many of them who are the Lib Dems. You know, I remember when Dominic Raab wanted to do away with the Human Rights Act and bring in a new Bill of Rights. And that made sense, something that was right for the UK. And what happened? It was the Lib Demers, if you like, in the Conservative Party that put a stop to that and watered everything down. And it was because of that we saw the growth in Reform. And if only we could just stick to our guns. But good for Kemi. But Kemi is going to have the stamina, because it's not just today or tomorrow. There are 3 more years before the next election. And I hope we keep Kemi, and I hope that Kemi will want to stay, because if we don't win the next election, and let's be honest, if you look at the current polling, we won't win the next election, then I think the election after that, for all the reasons I've just given, the Conservatives will be in a good position to win. But we'll have to see, won't we? We'll all be dead, both you and me, Ian, by the time that happens.
Are you sure? You are 58 years older than me, Michael. I should just add that in. The interesting thing about trends, though, is that, I mean, maybe you're being a bit too pessimistic in an intelligent way, if that makes sense, because we have seen things. I mean, look in Scotland, where, you know, half an hour ago, the SNP were dead and buried. You had Sturgeon and all that was going on there, and it looked as if there was not a cat in hell's chance that the SNP could make any inroads in any form of election, general, local, Holyrood, council, whatever, because that they were so badly tarnished and so badly damaged that they were, you know, being talked about. You know, the last leader, whose name escapes me, John Swinney. Was it Swinney? Yes.
Maybe not. Maybe he's the current one.
Sorry, he's the current. Yes, Swinney is the current one. Yes. Looked like an interim leader almost, like until they get the pain of the next election out the way, and then suddenly, almost out of nowhere, they're back. They're back.
But was it the SNP actually winning, or was it because the Labour Party have proven to me so hopeless that the only other logical party to vote for? And don't forget, although there was a massive win for Labour in the last general election, it wasn't really people voting for Labour. It was people voting anything but Tory. And it was that got Labour in. And as a consequence, people don't feel that attached to Labour. So, you know, with the mismanagement of Reeves and Starmer, and Starmer's incredibly grating voice. I mean, I was listening to him this morning saying how he was going to go on and on and on, to, you know, right up to the next election. That tinny voice is so irritating for people. But, you know, that is why there isn't the bedrock, if you like, enthusiasm for Labour, because people didn't really want Labour. They just didn't want the Tories. And I think in Scotland, we may be seeing the same thing. And I just wonder if there were a strong Labour Party nationally, whether the SNP would be doing so well. But you may be right about me being pessimistic about the Conservatives. I'm trying desperately to be fair, because everybody knows I was a Conservative MP. And I don't want to say everything is all right in the Conservative camp, because it isn't. But I hope that Kemi Badenoch can assert her authority. I think she's doing it at the moment, and keep those Lib Demers who are in the Conservative Parliamentary Party still, keep them down, so that if the Conservative Party is going to have an exciting manifesto, and I think under her they will try and do it, they can actually then deliver it, because deliverance is everything.
Yeah, and of course, again, it's those moving parts and things that can happen. You know, you need, you know, one party has a bit of a scandal, which literally it was that, wasn't it, that sort of began the SNP downfall. But if it happened to Labour or Reform, and Kemi Badenoch is in the middle of it all and looking good and bright and, you know, quite young and fresh. She's clearly intelligent. Her oratory skills seem to have settled down into a more comfortable place from where she was maybe a year or so ago. Who knows? I mean, it could well be that the Tories make this astonishing comeback.
Absolutely. And, you know, we've got 3 years to go yet. I mean, I know that Nigel Farage is exhausted, but God forbid, I wouldn't wish it to anyone. But if anything happened to Nigel Farage, where would that put the reform? I mean, would people still vote for Richard Tice? I don't know. I don't know whether the others, or Robert Jenrick, they're nice people, but do they have the charisma of Nigel Farage? I don't think they do. But and also, of course, I wouldn't say these are like local elections are like by-elections, but people can use local elections as a protest.
Yeah, that's true.
So come a general election, people might begin to think, well, you know what? You know, what actually is the defence policy of reform? What actually is the agriculture policy of reform? They don't have spokesmen at the moment for those subjects and many others. So they've got to get a team in place, and they haven't got it yet.
But they are. I mean, those
indentations,
though, Michael, do continue. We just heard that Reform UK have taken control of Suffolk County Council. So they've now got... You think about the map of England, they've got Suffolk, just below they've got Essex, and just below they've got Kent. So they're three pretty substantial council areas that they're now running. Now, I know a county council isn't an MP, but they aren't insignificant parts of our political lives. They run stuff, they have massive budgets, and they have to get it right. So this is an increasingly good day for reform.
Yes, but... the point you made, they've got to get it right, is absolutely the point.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm speaking to you now from Lichfield in Staffordshire, and Staffordshire has gone completely under reform, and it's been a fairly disastrous and embarrassing situation here, because they've gone through 3 leaders in the last 1.5 years, which is absolutely extraordinary. The first leader had to resign because of racial comments he'd been making on social media. The second leader, who replaced him, had to resign because of his racial comments. Then there was a huge gap while they fought out among themselves, and we've now got another leader. So it's not been great. And also, they brought in this Doge system, which is what Elon Musk did in the US to make savings. And for example, one of the things they were saying in Staffordshire, and I'm sure it'll be repeated up and down the country, that money was being wasted on gay prides in Staffordshire because the Conservative Staffordshire County Council supported gay pride, until they did the investigation and then found out that no actual money was being spent. It was moral support. You know, no money was saved by Doge. So, but maybe they'll do a better job in Suffolk, and they know damn well that they've got to do that if they're going to demonstrate that they can deliver for the UK.
Listen, on that point, Michael, thank you for being with us. Lovely to see you again, by the way. Have a great weekend. Sir Michael Fabricant, he is, of course, former Conservative MP, did about 30-odd years, I think, in Westminster. Now, commentator and broadcaster, thanking him. Good analysis there. I mean, look, you know, the takeaway is anything can happen. All manner of things can happen. Known unknowns and all that kind of Rumsfeld stuff. 0344 499 1000. But it's turning into an increasingly successful day for Reform UK. I think Nigel Farage said just a couple of hours ago, you know, the best results are yet to come. So we will see. We've got our eye on it. All the breaking news, any of those big hitters, and the changing face of the local government map. We'll bring it to you here first on Talk. And the obvious overarching question that springs from all of this is this the beginning of the end for Sir Keir Starmer? Lines are open. This is Talk.
current affairs, international news, letting criminals off while sending... Oi! Oi! You shut up. I'm trying to record something.
Stand by for 3 powerhouse hours of breaking news, challenging views. I don't give a flying damn about international law. I think people will viscerally reject this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, 0344 499 1000. Let's go to Paul in Brighton for some comment on all of this. How you doing, Paul?
I'm fine, thank you, Ian. Very well. I'm pleased with what I'm hearing about the results so far.
Yeah, incredible. What do you... So, I mean, in terms of whether it's, you know, there are people, of course, making the comment, it's a protest vote, and that's about it. Thoughts on that?
Well, whether it's a protest vote or not, Keir Starmer should read his own memo. Country first, party second. But clearly that only applies when he's trying to become Prime Minister.
I was thinking about that this morning, strangely enough, that very phrase, because he kept saying it, didn't he? Country first, party second.
He did indeed.
And now he's saying, I'm not going to walk away from this. But, of course, that's fine. If you're a Labour supporter, you want to see him go because you want someone else there. But if you're not a Labour supporter, and I'm going to take a punt, Paul, that you're definitely not a Labour supporter, then what takes over could be... You know, it could be a whole lot worse in many respects, but it might be a whole lot better for Labour.
Well, I don't care what's best for Labour. They're all useless as far as I'm concerned. So bring on Rayner, Burnham, Miliband, whoever. They're all useless, and it would just show them up for what they are. Absolutely, totally not interested in helping the country. They're only interested in their own growth and their own self-worth and egos.
Yeah.
Particularly Miliband. Absolute idiot, that guy. Failed leader.
Yeah, wannabe Prime Minister.
Unbelievable. You know.
There seems to be no self-awareness, does there, in these people? You know, I see Ed Miliband make those daft videos for sort of TikTok and stuff. And somebody obviously tells him, one of his advisors goes, "Oh, Ed, you're really good at this stuff. People love it." It's like, no, we just cringe a lot when we see it, but they don't seem to have that. And again, Angela Rayner, who kind of, you know, I don't wish to be unkind because I do like the fact that she, you know, her backstory didn't stop her getting to a high position in government. I like that aspect, not because it's her, but I think it shows that social mobility is alive and well in the UK if you want to make it work. However, I just don't think she's very good. And you can't dine out on being a northern lass with red hair. I mean, that only goes so far, right?
Smoking a fag with a pint in her hand. No, I agree with
exactly, yeah. Apparently she's given up the cigs.
I agree totally with the aspiration of someone who's come from, you know, a less well-off background. Yeah. But like you say, I think she's totally useless and inept. And like all of them, when it all comes down to looking after themselves, oh, yeah, I'll buy that property. Funnily enough, not far away from where I live. And I'll avoid the stamp duty. You know, yeah. I loved it when the. I mean, I hate graffiti per se, but that was the only bit of graffiti in my life I've ever enjoyed seeing when it said tax evader.
Tax evader, yeah. Well, you know,
going forward.
Something a socialist would never ever. I mean, that must have really hurt. Not because of the graffiti and the cost of getting rid of it, but just what you were called. It's like calling a lefty a capitalist, you know.
Now, what I would like to see going forward is if Kemi Badenoch and Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe can all kiss and make up and get on, just to get, and then actually let's adopt that. That's the only sensible thing Starmer's ever said. country first, party second. If all these people got together and did that, we'd have a half a chance. But if it doesn't happen, this country is doomed. It really is. It's gone too far now.
Yeah, it's not looking good, is it? Listen, Paul, I'm going to run just to get more comments on. Thank you, mate, for that. Have a great weekend, Paul, in Brighton. Mendy is in North London. Mendy, what have you got for us? Hi.
Hi, thanks so much for having me here.
Pleasure.
Yeah, so I think that this is more a message to Labour, how bad they were doing the last 2 years, than to Reform, how good they are.
Okay.
But I do think there is a significant thing that Reform, even though they've got basically Reform is Conservative, and they've got the Conservative Party and Restore Britain against them, basically splitting up their votes, and they still managed to have such a landslide, I think is a very strong development. Now, the previous person said that we should unite the three people like Kemi Badenoch, Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe. I don't know how good that would be, but I think that it sounds very nice, and unity is always a great thing, and especially when the three people who their values aren't very, they're quite closely aligned.
Yeah.
And I think that Tommy Robinson's trying to do that now. May the 16th, he invited all of these three candidates to come and talk at his huge historic event now.
Oh, well, I know certainly two of them probably won't turn up, but we'll watch with interest. Listen, Mendy, I'm only going to run because the news is literally 6 seconds away. Thank you, mate, for that. Great call. More of that on its way. 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Coming up on 3 minutes after 2 o'clock. Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome to the Home of Common Sense. Big old day, of course, following those local elections, and results are still coming in. The Labour Party facing a significant setback. Early results from English councils show that reform is gaining ground kind of all over the place. County councils and others too. Traditional Labour heartlands going down courtesy of reform. This, of course, has led to many questions around Keir Starmer. Is it the heralded beginning of the end for the Prime Minister. Despite this, of course, Keir Starmer says he's not going to walk away. Your thoughts on that? Other party leaders have been responding to the election as well. Reform's Nigel Farage has claimed Labour is wiped out. The Tories' Kemi Badenoch says she sees signs of renewal. Really? And Lib Dem leader Ed Davies said his party is very bullish as he jet skied down a mountain on an inflatable giraffe. So they're all happy about it in varying ways. Oh, and Zach Polanski, by the way, declares two-party politics is dead and buried. Well, he might be right about that. We'll bring you the latest, of course, all the results as they come in, and they are still coming in. And, of course, crucially, our eyes are on Scotland and Wales. Everything you need to know, all the breaking news right here on Talk 0344 499 1000. Margaret in Birmingham says this beleaguered PM Starmer is on the ropes. The drubbing handed out to Labour is a wake-up call and richly deserved. He should resign, but don't hold your breath. Well done, Nigel, and Reform, says Margaret. Brad in Cambridge says, at last, a day of some hope. Starmer is so incredibly thick-skinned, he's detached from the ordinary man or woman on the street that he is obviously, it is obvious of how they feel. I have to say, though, I do have a tad sympathy for Kemi Badenoch. I have to respect her, says Brad. I mean, she did have it's not a concession speech, but considering the Tories also got overarchingly a bit of a kicking too, she was very buoyant in that that response, as we played a couple of times in the last hour. Let's get a word from Joe Twyman, co-founder and director of Delta Poll. Joe, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Ian.
Well, we knew it was going to kind of be a bit like this, didn't we? I mean, there was no, in many respects, not many surprises. Would that be fair?
That's right. Going into this contest, we knew that it was the case that Labour were in a bad position in the polls and were likely to suffer many losses. And that had been the case for some time. The key question was the degree to which the polls for all of the parties could be replicated at the ballot box. And what appears to have happened is that, yes, Labour have taken a big hit, but the early indications, and I do stress early indications because we've still got a long way to go, the early indications are that perhaps it might not be quite as bad as the sort of 1,400, 1,500 seat loss that was predicted going into the contest. At the same time, the Conservatives have received a large number of losses themselves, but they've been able to pick up surprise victories in places like Harlow and also Westminster Borough Council in London. And so it really is a mixed picture, and a mixed picture that was expected.
A mixed picture that was expected, of course. We are still in the midst of building that picture, Joe. Results coming in all the time. I think the last one, which I thought was significant for many reasons, was that Reform have taken Suffolk County Council. Geographically, that is quite interesting. They have Suffolk, they have Essex, they have Kent. So that curve, if you like, of the south and the southeast, well and truly owned by Reform UK.
Yes, and the demographics of that are very important. Historically, going back, lots of those areas were populated in the post-war period by white working class people leaving the East End of London, and those communities have grown, and that replicates the kind of areas that Reform is particularly popular in. Those that did not go to university, older groups, white working class areas, and it wouldn't surprise me if indeed Norfolk goes as well. So that whole of East Anglia. But it's not just the fact that they've won; it's the margin of victory. Reform UK were declaring Essex very, very early on because they'd won so many of the seats there, and similarly Suffolk has been a strong performance, and many of those constituencies, areas like Thurrock in Kent, for instance, tends to be bellwethers. In other words, indications of where the national vote might be going. But it's worth pointing out this is still local elections, and it's some time until the general election comes around.
It's kind of weird, isn't it, how it works? And I know this is what you guys do for a living, and to an extent, obviously, in news journalism, we do too. But everybody, I think, does get confused by really being able to knuckle down what makes somebody tick when it comes to literally tick at the ballot box. You look at Kent as a great example, which forever was a kind of blue county in terms of MPs. All manner of different characters had been, you know, high-profile front benchers have been MPs. Everything seemed to more or less be blue. There are a couple of exceptions. Then, of course, last election, it all turned a bit red. But then, in the meantime, the council turned reform. So what do you extrapolate from that pattern? These are the same people being able to vote, of course.
Well, you can look at it in local terms. You can also look at it in international terms. Back in 2024, there were 74 elections across the world, and 73 of those saw the incumbent lose vote share. Now, it's usual for incumbents to lose vote share, but not in that number of elections. What we're seeing across the democratic world, but particularly in established democracies, is a move away from incumbents who are failing to deliver, and that can be on the left or the right of the political spectrum, and then being replaced by challenger movements. Now, those challenger movements can be everything from Keir Starmer in the last election to Reform UK in this election. It can be Donald Trump in the United States, who similarly is having trouble on delivery as well. The lasting impacts of things like the, well, you can go back to the economic crisis of 2008, but then supercharged by things like COVID and the huge after effects we're still feeling because of that on many areas of our society, but also uncertainty around the war in Ukraine and more recently in Iran. All of these add together to create economic uncertainty, and people's perceptions feed off that. And so what you're seeing time and again is a failure of delivery being punished at the ballot box. The key question now for those replacements is, are they able to deliver?
Yeah, of course. And we know that there's been some tricky moments for councils. Kent County Council have had their more than fair share of gyp. You know, I think they fired off half a dozen of those councillors. Some, I think, went to restore, but and they've realised it isn't easy. Although I do understand it that the leader of Kent County Council is, you know, apparently incredibly diligent and working quite hard to tick as many boxes as possible. Simultaneously, they haven't gone completely nuts and done anything that, you know, some of their enemies predicted they might have done, or as far as I can see, anyway. In terms of the rest of the picture, now, just putting Wales and Scotland aside, Joe, we'll come back to that in a second. Are there some biggies that we're waiting for in the next couple of hours that are going to be even more significant, both to Keir Starmer and to the likes of Nigel Farage?
Well, a whole host of areas are counting during the day. This is another thing that's happened since COVID. The good old days when the results came in overnight are long gone. But I think of particular interest will be the outer London boroughs. Areas like Barnet, for instance, where I am now. There's a really interesting question about how the Conservatives perform in areas that are more ethnically mixed and have higher proportions of people who are university educated, but still feel anti-Labour and are not demographically disposed to the Greens. And so will the Conservatives, for instance, pick up Barnet in the way that they picked up Westminster? Or will we see a split between Conservatives and Reform in places like Barnet that allow Labour to maintain control? It's a really interesting question and a reflection of the complexity of the multi-party system that we now have, which means that it's perfectly possible in individual seats or councils that you can have 3, 4, 5, perhaps even 6 different parties and organisations on relatively equal footing in terms of the votes.
We were talking in the last hour to Michael Fabricant, former Conservative MP, about trends, and he was an MP for over 30 years, so, you know, he saw a lot things come, they go, they change, they look good, they look bad. So he'd been through the entire picture many times, and we were just looking at those kind of interesting trends. You come to Scotland, for example, where it really wasn't that long ago that the SNP looked as if they were absolutely dead in the water. They had a couple of scandals, and certainly the mood music around them was not good. It seemed that they were probably on their last chance at running the place. Now, of course, somehow, and maybe it was the what some would point to as the ineptitude of the current government, who knows, but it appears they're odds on to continue for a 5th term running Holyrood.
Yes, that's right. They may indeed achieve a majority in Holyrood for the first time since 2011. And the significance of that could be enormous in terms of what it means for independence in Scotland. And similarly in Wales, Plaid Cymru and Reform are both expected to do well, with Plaid expected to be the largest party, and Labour, who have ruled in Wales basically forever, losing control there. What that means, not in terms of independence, but in terms of further powers gained for Wales at the expense of Westminster, could be important as well. And so it's similar pattern in that sees people who are dissatisfied, distrusting, and disapproving, not just of political parties and candidates, but of the political system generally. That same pattern that sees people moving to Reform and the Greens in England sees them very often moving towards the SNP and Plaid in Scotland and Wales, respectively.
Wales, of course, again, there was, it seemed, 6 months ago, Joe, people were only talking about a Reform victory in Wales. That definitely was a period of fairly consistent headlines. Reform are going to take it from Labour. And then over the last month, I would say, that kind of was slightly relegated to maybe a second position, and Plaid Cymru wiping out Labour. Now, the big headline there is that Labour, for the first time ever since devolution, lose control of Wales. But Reform still coming second would be significant.
Yes, it would. Politics is so often about momentum, and the Senedd by-election that took place, where Reform were expected to do well, but actually got beaten relatively strong by a relatively strong Plaid Cymru, demonstrated how they could provide an alternative not just to Reform but to Westminster parties as well. And I think they've really benefited from that kind of momentum in Wales. Yeah. And so it will be interesting to see how they do. I think it's unlikely they'll get a majority, which means they'll have to go into coalition with other parties. But I'm sure that Reform will do well, and the degree to which they can be a prominent voice in the newly enlarged Senedd will be very interesting for Wales.
Just a final question then, Joe. There will, of course, the knives will be out. In fact, we kind of already know they're out. I mean, the Prime Minister can say whatever he wants to say, and front benchers can do the media rounds in the morning and say whatever they've been told to say. But we do know people are on manoeuvres. We certainly hear stories today that Ed Miliband might have even had a word with Keir Starmer and said, you know, you need to plan this out to make this happen smoothly. Angela Rayner would love it. We know that she does have 81 voices on those backbenches that would support her. Then again, so does Wes Streeting. Is there anything in the polling at the moment that tells us who, if there were a leadership challenge, is likely to be the next leader of the Labour Party and therefore our Prime Minister?
You can ask the question, but it's very misleading in terms of the answers, because the reality is that most people don't know anything about any of the candidates. And so on the plus side, they're all a clean slate, but on the downside, none of them really win people over, at least yet. All of the people that you've mentioned have issues. Andy Burnham is not an MP, and so something would have to happen that could cost the Manchester mayoralty for Labour. Similarly, Wes Streeting, very narrow majority in his constituency. Angela Rayner, all the issues around her tax and HMRC, etc., etc. So none of the candidates are obvious, all have issues. And if you're going to bring about change, this is not about an ideological repositioning. This is about an ability to sell delivery to the voters so that they perceive change is happening and things are improving. So the question is, who is best placed to do that? And is Keir Starmer going to move aside and allow it? Because ultimately, it's still relatively difficult to remove someone if they don't want to go. So big, big questions for the future of the Labour Party, not just for the next few weeks and months, but for the next few years.
On that point, Joe, great to have you on. Thank you. Have a cracking day. It's going to be a busy one, of course. Joe Twyman, co-founder and director of Delta Poll. Thank you to him. More comment in from you. Margaret in Edinburgh says, Ian, the annoying thing in Scotland is most of the people that vote SNP have not got a clue of the devolved powers that the SNP has. Also, there are 53% on the same kind of benefits. On some kind of benefits. We have no chance of getting the SNP out. Margaret, thank you for that. And it did look, I mean, it certainly looked up until so recently that the SNP were done for. But, you know, politics is a perception thing. It's so much a perception. And perception then sort of becomes reality. When I never ever got the thing, the mood music around Nicola Sturgeon. I never understood it, but I knew she was intelligent, and I knew she could talk. So that's a big thing. When I say she could talk, she could, talk the legs off her During COVID, when she gave a briefing personally every day. Now, Boris Johnson down in Westminster gave a briefing, more or less it was him on most days, but sometimes it was Rishi Sunak, sometimes it was it Priti Patel? Anyway, there were various ministers. She made that a thing. Now, during COVID, for some reason, Nicola Sturgeon's star rose and Boris Johnson's fell. Scotland and England had pretty much the same kind of issues with COVID, same sort of death rates, same care home issues, same issues around and controversies around lockdowns, etc. But for some reason, Sturgeon sort of was a beneficiary of all of that, whereas Johnson was widely maligned and criticised and seen as the bloke that got it horribly wrong. Interesting. Some breaking news. The First Minister of Wales, Ellen Morgan, is expected to lose her seat. Multiple sources are telling the BBC the Welsh Labour leader has been First Minister since 2024, so fairly newish to the post in that respect. But if the First Minister loses their seat, then you have to look at the significance of that. And predictions are that Labour will lose running Wales altogether. Peter is in Dorset. What are you making of it all, Peter? Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon to you on this nice sunny afternoon. Tell me if I'm wrong, but once the councillors are in their place, if they decide that what's coming out of Westminster is not going to happen in their council, that is correct in saying that they can decide it's not going to happen in our council. Is that right?
So say that again. If they decide as a councillor or as a council?
Yes. If they decide as a council not to implement what's coming out of Parliament, that can happen, or they still have to...
No, they could. Yes, I mean, I think there are some rules and regulations where they don't legislate on. There are certain areas that are national, not like, roads is an obvious example. So they fix some roads, but national highways fix the motorways, as it were. So there's that kind of thing. But in terms of everything else, they pretty much can do their own thing, but of course they are dependent on funding from central government as well as council tax, because that's quite key, and it's been cut considerably over the years.
But there could be an almighty freeze in the country if councils decide we're not going ahead with what Labour do and with what they want, and Labour don't provide money. We could be in a position of real deadlock. But the way I look at it after today, it's not like any other kind of council elections that we've ever had. This is a complete statement of the country, and basically, as far as I'm concerned, the electorate really need to go for the jugular. If we want to put the bee back in Britain, if we want to have everything the way we want it, we want to have people feeling British again. We want the pubs not being closed every 5 minutes. And it's not about drinking houses. The pubs are an institution in this country. People come from all over the world just to come to see and be in our pubs because it's a heritage of ours. It's not just a drinking house, and it's a community place for many in this country. And if we want to be back to where we were, then we need to have a very strong massive majority with real clout that can go ahead and absolutely turn Britain back to what it needs to be. Build the armed forces, get rid of the wokes, get welfare in its right position, people who deserve to get it coming back, and sort out all the nonsense in universities at the same time. Yes, it's a massive undertaking for whoever comes in to Parliament next time round, and it's unlikely they'll manage it in one term. But I think there is the will from the Reform Party, from what I hear all the time, and the common sense from the Reform Party, that this has got a chance of at least getting on the right railway tracks and starting to deal with the situation.
Well, quite possibly, yes, and that's what many people will be hoping for. Peter, thank you. Peter in Dorset. I just thought of the classic example, by the way, of what county councils can't do. So Kent County Council is reform, all right? Where is the coalface of immigration and channel migrants in Kent, OK? Nearly every migrant that arrives in this country initially, not all, but mostly arrives in Kent. It's down there on the south coast. It's Dover and, you know, east of one way or the other. It's that neck of the woods. Now, there's not a lot that reform can do about it. So what can they do then about where you put migrants or where you house migrants or facilitating their travel? That largely becomes a Home Office issue, so there's not much they can do there. I think I'm right in saying that if there's here's a good example, child migrants. I think county councils have, local authorities at least, probably at county level, have a responsibility, a duty of care to child migrants until, get this, until they're 25. I stand to be corrected on that, but I'm pretty sure that is the age. Now, if Kent County Council said we are going to refuse to fund that, what I would imagine would happen is the Home Office would then take a legal case against Kent County Council, and the council would probably lose it, because at the moment that's what's set in law. So there is a wide range of significant issues on which county councils are quite impotent, and to many people that still remains quite surprising. Is your county council only responsible for some potholes and some lampposts and bin collections? And even much of that, of course, goes down to a local level. 0344 499 1000. More results on their way. Stand by. 24 minutes after 2. This is Talk.
That it's all you're amazing.
Right. Paul White! Sir Lenny Henry!
I was face down and the dog sniffed my crotch. It was very, very embarrassing.
Staying out for the summer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Jacqueline in Liverpool says, regards to Rayner, as a northern lass with red hair myself, she is a total embarrassment. It's nothing to do with social mobility aspiration. The only fact she is kept around is because they can still kid the die-hard Labour supporters that they are working class. Yes, I get that, and I think Jacqueline is kind of right that I mean, you look at Rayner's, when you look at the money involved in that house she was selling and the one she was buying, and you think, yeah, I mean, you can't really dine out Ange on the working class ticket anymore. My point was, anyone that's made it from a council estate into Parliament holding prime ministers to account, I like that story, you know, because we know that there are establishment people that have been covering those green benches, left wing and right wing. So the left just had loads of union people, the right had load of rich old landed gentry, and that's how it was. So knowing that path is available, I think, is the point. I don't think Rayner is necessarily the most talented person to have crossed it, and I'm not trying to be, it's not a cheap jibe. I just don't think she's cut out for that job. I think of plenty of Kemi Badenoch, I think, is cut out for that job in the sense of, I think she could pull it off. I think she lacks in lots of other areas, having said that. This one from Kevin, who says, to quote Winston Churchill, now this is not the end, it's not even the beginning of the end, but perhaps it's the end of the beginning. Yeah. It's always good to get that the right way around, as Kevin has, by the way. Gareth is in Derbyshire. What have you got for us, Gareth? Afternoon.
Good afternoon, Ian. It's nice to speak to you.
You too. Far away.
I'm just thinking about Kemi Badenoch.
Yeah.
Because I think she's quite good. She's quite a good politician, and she comes across really well. But wouldn't she be better off defecting to Reform? Because, obviously the people have given up with the Conservatives.
Yeah.
And I know the last time this happened, it's a decade for them to make a sort of kind of comeback. And I just feel slightly concerned and sorry for Kemi Badenoch because, I mean, it's like putting Pep Guardiola in charge of Sheffield Wednesday, isn't it? The Conservative Party is clearly a busted flush. It's like the Republicans in France. It's just gone to a point where it's past its sell-by date.
But they've got to make themselves relevant, haven't they? And that's the problem they've got, is that all the stuff that they would on any other day of the week had been able to dine out on and say, look, we feel strongly about this. Reform are now using those policies to their advantage and owning those policies, because they can easily point to the Tories and say, well, you say this, but you tried it and didn't work, or you didn't even try it. So they've put themselves in this very almost lethal pincer manoeuvre, but they clearly sense, I guess, Gareth, that there is a chink of light there that they can find their way through.
Well, they are slightly deluded. I heard John Redwood on the programme this morning, actually.
Yeah.
And they are to a point, they're condescending, deluded, because they're living in a bubble. It's like a sugar-coated ship or a castle with a moat round it, and they just listen to themselves. But the reality is, most of the public just aren't listening to them. They might be very polite to them, but they're just not going to vote.
I tell you what, I think partly. Yeah, I think partly what they're hoping for, though, is that the Reform star will wane, and there'll be enough kind of examples of where some of these councils that Reform run don't work. There'll be the odd scandal among the kind of big hitters in Reform, or some. This is what I think the Tories are kind of hoping for, and the Conservatives will begin to just look like the sensible party. They might not be perfect. They might have mucked it up royally in the last time they were in government, but they're the adults in the room. I think that's the best they can hope could happen, and that's a lot of hopes.
The problem they've got is, to win a general election, you need the whole of the centre ground and you need the right of centre.
Yeah.
The last time, when it took them 10 years, they didn't have anybody standing on their ground at all. They were just fighting against Labour.
Yeah, they were. They really were, and they've still got the problem that Michael Fabricant made this point. They've still got the problem of this huge divide between what you'd call right-wing Tories and kind of fairly liberal as in Lib Demi type Tories, and there's the problem. Gareth, we've got to move, but thank you very much indeed for that. 0344 499 1000. Labour MP Ian Lavery has called for Keir Starmer to resign. He said Keir Hardie started the Labour Party. It could be another Keir Starmer that could end the party forever. It's an obvious quote, but it sort of works. 0344 499 1000. More from you on the way. We're throwing the question out, is this the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer? And also, I want to gauge your wider views on the significance of these results that have come in so far, with Reform UK adding 643 councillors to the equation, the Tories losing 291 and Labour losing 425. Without doubt, the accolade, if you like, the Oscar does go to Reform UK. Will that be the direction of travel? Is it a wobble? Is it a protest vote? Or is this clearly the direction of travel and intent for the next general election? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk 25 to 3. So we're seeing the results trickle in. It does bug me, but I'm going to keep saying this, 2026, and we should have to wait like a whole day or more for an election result, sometimes from a small council. They didn't start counting the Scottish and the Welsh results until, was it about mid-morning or something? Or do they all go out for a meal the night before? Just get in there counting. Goodness me. It was Reform's night, say the headlines. But was it a night of congratulations to other parties? Let's speak with Baroness Natalie Bennett, former leader of the Green Party. And I think I'm fair to say, Natalie, still a Green, right?
Absolutely, representing the Green in the House of Lords, and really celebrating a wonderful day thus far, with an awful lot more to come, with, of course, the first ever Green elected mayor, Zoe Garbutt, in Hackney. Great result in Manchester, where we got 38% of the vote. Newcastle, Sheffield, I just heard that we've thrown out the former Labour leader of the council. Places like Reading, Exeter and Oxford, great vote percentages that really set us up for the next general election. So, you know, this is a day that's going to be absolutely huge for us.
I mean, you say that. I mean, there were 5,066 seats up for grabs. You've gained 68. That's fewer people than they'll be taking England players to the World Cup.
Well, I think, Ian, that you were just complaining about the way the count is happening, and of course we are seeing most of central London has yet to declare. Sheffield is just coming in, won't be on that tally yet. Many of the results are not there yet. We are going to see an absolutely spectacular result for the Green Party. I mean, the figure I'm looking at just at this moment is 140 wins, and 70 of those are gains. We're just seeing gains racking up all over the place.
We are seeing, of course, I think your leader, Zach Polanski, made the point, and others have too, that this is we've talked about the end of two-party politics for a long time, but this really is the moment. Do you share that view?
Absolutely, totally, and obviously, the two legacy parties are having an absolutely dreadful day. I'm not quite sure, Kemi Badenoch is saying this shows the Tories have turned a corner. I think she might have...
She looked like she reacted like she'd become the Prime Minister, Natalie, and I thought, what's she doing?
Well, I wonder if she clicked on the wrong link and, went back to something 10 years ago or something like that. Perhaps she made a mistake there in what she clicked on, but... the reality is that people are utterly fed up with the politics as usual that they're offering. People really want hope, really want something different, want real change. And that's why we are doing so well in these elections. And we're also seeing real enthusiasm and energy, I think, as well as the actual results.
Do you think it's, look, I think it's congratulations to anyone who wins a democratic vote. We should always be happy that we live in a place where we even have democratic elections, national, local, mayoral, whatever they are. We all agree on that. But, and I don't say this to be insulting, Natalie, I've spoken to you over the years many, many times, and you're always great to chat to on this, but is this whole green thing, is it a bit of a kind of student-y kind of left-wing phase? A bit cool to be green, it's like, oh, I'm nice, I've got my social credentials, I can preen my virtuous whiskers more than you can. Is it a little bit of that going on there?
Well, I think this is people who are looking for hope, who are looking for the getting away from the current reality of today, which is so many people who are struggling to put food on the table, keep a roof over their head. What we're seeing now is happening as we're all rather distracted. What's happening in Iran, more cause for concern about the cost of living crisis, getting much worse, people struggling so hard. And we have to arrange things differently. So the one thing that's profoundly unrealistic is to have any sort of suggestion that we can continue as we are now.
Well, that's where reform come in, isn't it? Because they're really hoovering up the votes. I mean, you guys are giving it a go, and I get that. But on the other side of the spectrum, Nigel Farage is doing it with booster rockets on.
Well, what we're seeing is very, very clearly something I've actually been saying to you over the years, Ian, for a long time, is that this is politics is becoming green versus reform. That's what we're seeing is we are offering hope. They are offering fear. They are driving people to think, oh, we're desperate. We've got to do something different. But we are offering that hope. And what we're doing is building for the long term. Many of the places where we're doing very well now, say Sheffield, for example, we've gradually been building up over many years. And that's a really solid foundation that we're now building on. Whereas reform, we've seen what happened in the reform councils that have been elected, last year, for example. We've seen a great deal of chaos, a great deal of trouble. And I very much fear for the communities that have elected reform councils.
But they've got hundreds and hundreds of seats, and they're representing significant councils. Kent, Essex, Suffolk, these are big areas. People want reform, Natalie. I mean, they might have a dalliance with the Greens, like they would with the Lib Dems, but it's reform that people are gravitating. They're not all stupid. They're not all scared.
Oh, I think a very large number of people in Britain are scared about their economic future. But I think if you look at, for example, in Manchester, where we won 16 seats, now that was one of the councils where only a third of the seats were up for grabs. We would have seen Labour lose control of that, what would have been described as a traditional heartland council, with us surging up behind them. We haven't seen many of the results from London yet, but we're going to see extremely strong results in London. It's just a case of, at the moment, you're hitting a snapshot in the middle with still the majority of results not to come in. I'd urge you and everybody to actually look at when we get the final results. that's going to be how you judge Green versus Reform.
Yeah, maybe we should chat then. I'll be at home then, so it'll be a call from the sofa, Natalie, if you don't mind, but we can still have a nice old chinwag over a glass of red.
I'm sure we could, yes.
Listen, I mean, look, the Greens aren't without their problems, of course, and we know that the party suspended about a dozen candidates during the election campaign. There's the anti-Semitism thing, which once haunted Jeremy Corbyn's Labour, appears to be hanging round the ankles of the Green Party. Why has your party got a problem with Jewish people?
We have 4,500, more than 4,500 candidates standing here, and we have a handful of candidates that issues have been raised with. We are dealing with those issues. We've dealt with them. That will be taken forward. People know that the Green Party has always been the anti-racist party. People know that the Green Party has always stood up for human rights and the rule of law all around the world, and that's something we will continue to do. And I think that's something that the public very clearly understands.
But there's a lot, I mean, you say that, but I mean, it depends where somebody draws that line, isn't it? Because if people think, and I sense on the left, and maybe some of these, 30 council candidates being investigated. That's quite a lot, and fair play for having investigations. But many of these people don't recognise that they are being either racist, and despite the fact that I think 2 of them were kicked out for literally inciting, arrested even, on suspicion of stirring up and inciting racial hatred online. I mean, these people don't recognise this as racism, do they? Because they don't recognise Jews in the same way. I mean, this is a problem that really overtly the left experience at the moment, particularly in the Green Party.
Well, I think anti-Semitism is a problem right across our society, and it's absolutely vital that we tackle this right across society. The Green Party is part of society. We have to tackle it as all other elements in society do. But I have absolute faith in Green values, in Green understanding, in belief in human rights and the rule of law. And the Greens have always been the people who've spoken out against discrimination of all kinds right across society, including anti-Semitism, and that's very much what we'll continue to be doing.
Final question then, Natalie. Let's say I knock on the door of Green Party HQ, say I'm a floating voter, got absolutely no idea where I should go. I'm looking at Green policies. It looks like you want to penalise and make being a landlord illegal, but you're quite relaxed about me having a line of Coke before I've got out of bed in the morning. So, I mean, are they the great selling points of the Greens? Why would I gravitate to the Greens? What would be the big attraction for me?
Well, the big attraction is that we say that we have to have a society that meets people's needs while we live within the physical limits of this one fragile planet. We know that we have to have change to move in that direction, to move towards a society where no one has to worry about putting food on the table, keeping a roof over their head, and where we have clean air to breathe, where we have warm, comfortable homes, where we have a society that works. And I'm afraid at the moment we do not have a society that's working for people or planet.
On that point, Natalie, thank you. Always lovely to speak. Have a great weekend. She is Baroness Natalie Bennett, former leader of the Green Party. Always very personable, always very accessible, happy to speak. What do you make of what she said? They're not an anti-Semitic party. They deal with it. They want to save the planet. They are the real alternative. Reform are a bit dangerous because they're scaring people. I mean, she's electioneering like they all do, of course. What reason would I vote Green? I can't really think of one. 0344 499 1000. This in from, and there's loads coming in here, Amanda, who says Starmer doesn't have the dignity or class to resign. Like all narcissists, he feels no shame or humility. But he will have to, yeah, that's probably right. But they all, it's kind of the same thing, isn't it? Just before Boris Johnson went, the knives were out for Boris Johnson. I'm going nowhere. Well, it's all fluster and blah, blah. No. There's nothing to see here. And then, 2 days later, he's gone. So that's generally how it happens. There is a lot of mood music around the idea that we will see somebody, was it yesterday? The Andy Burnham story, that a Northwest MP will, in a very safe Labour seat, will stand aside to create a by-election. Andy Burnham will stand in the by-election, and bingo, he's in. Now, once he's in, I doubt whether, on day one, He's going to go, I want to be Prime Minister. That's not a great constituency MP speech, is it, really? Then accept, I've only come to represent you people in this particular constituency so I can get a bigger job. That would be a bit rubbish. But that is where this story could go, and it could happen really quickly. I think this weekend is going to be quite telling. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
It just so happens that it's all you're amazing.
Right. Paul White! Sir Lenny Henry!
I was face down and the dog sniffed my crotch. It was very, very embarrassing.
Staying out for the summer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
10 to 3. This is Talk. Oh, we've got the voice of doom, haven't we? Forgot about the voice of doom. We'll come to that in a second. Chris says, can't believe people voted Green and Liberals. Reform all the way for me. You see, I'm always a bit mixed on this because I love our democracy so much. I love this country so much. Despite everything that's gone on with it, and it's falling apart in so many areas, and really needs somebody. He's like that new head teacher, or the new army officer that's sent down from HQ to sort out the barracks. It needs that kind of approach. But I still love the idea that we have parties of all shades and colours, and because it's a unique reminder. And I always give the analogy that I quite like seeing a protest of something I fundamentally disagree with, even if it makes me angry, because it's sort of a reminder of, yeah, we live in a place where you can do that. There are dozens of countries around the world, or at least a dozen, they would just shoot you if you had a protest, particularly if you did it outside of Parliament, whereas here we literally have a place outside of Parliament where people can protest. So it's good to have that spectrum of choice and parties and flavours, but it doesn't mean to say it does. We lost a microphone then that literally fell off my jacket. Probably just telling me to shut up, isn't it, really? But it came back. I don't know how that went. We live in a place with remarkable choice, and that's good. But yes, we can still lampoon and satirise those parties that we find curious, strange, and sometimes dangerous as much as we can. Let's speak with journalist Dan Hodges on this result. Dan, good afternoon to you. And we've been making the point really for the last couple of hours. I mean, is this the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer? I would suggest, and I think you might echo this, it's almost a question you don't need to ask.
Yeah, I mean, it quite clearly is. Again, we're just in the situation now of what is the mechanism and what is the timetable. Yeah. I mean, if you remember going into these elections, there was an attempt by Downing Street and Keir Starmer supporters to say, actually, do you know what? If you look at how he's been managing the Iran crisis, foreign affairs, standing up to Trump, people are starting to sort of look at him afresh. They're starting to reassess what they were thinking about him. You know, we heard all this talk about the Love Actually strategy. Well, I mean, yesterday that strategy collided with reality and is continuing to collide with reality as the results come in. Yeah. You know, we're not going to see a move today. We're probably not going to see a move over the weekend because the members of the cabinet and the parliamentary party will want time to sort of go back to the constituencies, reassess what's happening. But then we're going to have another attempt next week from Starmer for another great reset, another relaunch. Yeah. That will end in the same way all the other relaunches have ended. And then it will be a question of just, as I say, somebody finally mapping out the timetable and seeing about, you know, what the actual process will be for his removal and for his replacement to come in. These results are just not sustainable, and everybody in the Labour Party recognises it. Yeah, and the worst. I mean, Keir Starmer is in. He's made the statement he's made today that, you know, I'm not going to walk away from this, etc. But of course, as we sit here, Dan, at nearly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the real tragedy is the worst results are yet to come. Well, that's the thing, and there was actually a degree of despair and anger amongst members of the cabinet and the wider PLP about the statement that Starmer delivered, because it was a couple of things. Firstly, it was the sense of denial, you know, in terms, these were tough results, but we knew they were going to be tough, and people are frustrated by the pace of change, but we knew that. That's why I got elected. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to carry on. Yeah. And that sort of tone deaf, nothing to see here, carry on like before, infuriated a lot of MPs. Also, just on a technical basis, the fact that he came out and delivered that before we'd had any of the results in Scotland and Wales. Yeah. Wales, which particularly is a bloodbath, was kind of indicative of his kind of disregard for Scotland and Wales. But as I said, I mean, it's, you know, everybody can see it's the spread of the losses and the scale of the losses. Yeah. You know, in the north, the northwest, the Midlands. Obviously, we've got the sort of the real sort of green facing, if you like, areas of London still to come, and it's basically carnage across the board for Labour. Yeah,
it's hard to sort of extrapolate a positive in this. Now, some say, trying to be kind to Labour, that, well, hang on a second, you know, we've seen these local election results before. You know, one day out of nowhere the country turns red or the country turns blue, and we can remember various times over the last 10 or 15 years when we can visage the map when it looked like that. So this is just a bit of that. Come the general election, it'll all change and people will revert to type. Now, is that true, or are we seeing the end of two-party politics? What's your take on the wider issue on this?
I'm not sure we're seeing I wouldn't quite say we are definitely seeing the end of two-party politics, because, again, I'm afraid to come back to it, because we have what I've been talking about today. We have this distorting prism of Keir Starmer. He is so hated and despised universally across the length and breadth of the land that in a sense it's quite difficult to do any sort of more objective assessment because he distorts everything so much. My own view is, and I can only go on what I was picking up when I was out on the doorsteps. I mean, I was up in the northeast last week. I did get a sense for the first time that actually some of the shine was actually starting to come off Nigel Farage and Reform. That's what I was starting to pick up. We've obviously seen, a number of people have had some serious doubts and questions about the Greens and Zach Polanski. It does seem that to an extent, the sort of the anti-Semitism row has had an impact on the Greens in certain areas of London. So I would basically just say we just have to slightly cool our jets a little bit, because remember, this is midterm. A vote for Reform or the Greens is broadly a cost-free option. I mean, it may not ultimately prove to be that for people who have, Greens or Reform running their councils. But let's not pretend this was a set of elections dominated by local issues. I mean, we literally had Labour's, the last sort of party political broadcast Keir Starmer put out for the local elections involved him talking about Iran. So, which gives you an indication of what the backdrop to this was. So we just have to wait and see. But one thing is certain. I mean, if the Labour Party stick their head in the sand, and I don't think this will happen, but if they were, God forbid, to basically say, oh well, actually, do you know what? We'll stick with Keir Starmer. Nothing to see here. Just a bit of midterm blues. Well, at that point, the sort of anger and fury that we're seeing from the British public directed towards the Labour Party would then be off the charts, and then I do think you would be into completely uncharted territory.
And just finally, Dan, we've only got about 10 or 15 seconds, but this challenge to Keir Starmer, when's it likely to happen? Next week, next month, after the summer?
I think we'll start to see some moves next week. What I'm looking at next week is, will Andy Burnham announce that he thinks he has a route back into Parliament? And if he does announce that, will Keir Starmer try to block him?
Dan, thank you. Always good to see you. Have a great weekend. Dan Hodges, columnist with The Mail. Thank you to him. More from you. We are hearing that Labour have admitted defeat in Wales, essentially. SNP are claiming victory in Scotland. The full results not yet in, but we will see. But that's certainly the mood music around all of that. Details to come, 0344 499 1000. Let's get the news at 3.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is the Afternoon Empire, the home of common sense, and what a day. Following those election results, they're still coming in, by the way. It does appear that the SNP are pretty much claiming Scotland, although we understand there are suggestions that the vote share has fallen. This often happens. You have to extrapolate all of those figures. Even suggestions that, and I don't quite know why, Labour would be saying, oh, yeah, we admit we've lost Wales, when only one result has come in, but they're obviously sensing some mood music there as well. What does it all mean? There's so many questions on this. Is it the beginning of the end for Keir Starmer? We kind of know the answer to that. But widen that out for me. Tell me about your own neck of the woods. What do you take from these elections? Because they weren't really. For those areas that had a vote, and I didn't have one, my neck of the woods, no elections, and many people also didn't have them. But for those that did, this was seen more than just as more than just a local election, something much bigger. Party leaders, of course, have been in buoyant mood, despite the fact that Keir Starmer said, I'm not going to walk away from this, and conceded that it was all his fault. But other leaders, Kemi Badenoch saying it shows signs of renewal for the Tories. Ed Davey said his party is very bullish. Zach Polanski said two-party politics is now dead and buried. What do you make of all of that? 0344 499 1000 is where you will find us. Lots to get through. Let's get a word from Sebastian Salick. Broadcaster, has been the Labour councillor for Waltham Forest since 2022, but did not restand in this election. Is that because you wanted to move on, Sebastian, or you just hate defeat?
Hi, no, it was family reasons. I'm that age where you're trying to do everything, get married, have a child and all the rest of it. And it's hard to juggle that, being a counsellor and the various jobs we do at home and in our professional lives. So it's a purely personal decision.
But you're probably glad you're out now, aren't you? Because, you know, your party, man alive, what is going on here? Look, I know these are midterm elections and stuff, but this is a proper bruising for Labour.
Do you know what? I think it was priced in. I mean, look, when we were talking about this election 4 years ago, we came in and we thought, OK, we've got 4 years now before the next one. We knew that there was a chance we were going to be 2 years into government. And that was before any of this happened. It was before Reform was even really a party. So there was always the challenge that you're just in national government and you're going to take a hit. On top of that, I think you're seeing people continue to gamble. We saw UKIP in 2014. We saw Corbyn. We saw Brexit. We've seen all of these ways that voters have tried alternatives to mainstream parties. And so far, none of them have worked. We're still in the mire that we've been in for the last decade and a half, because the big problem is nobody else is coming with any answers. We've got lots of big personalities, but no real solutions. And that's what really frustrates me.
Yeah, what was frustrating voters, though, do you think? Because why would it be that Reform have gained 686 council seats, many at the expense of fairly significant Labour strongholds? Something is going on there.
Yeah, well, I mean, the big answer is that nobody's really had a pay rise since 2008, and that certainly wasn't the case while the Tories were in. And that starts to add up, doesn't it? Because everything starts to feel more expensive, your quality of life gets worse, and you start to look for alternatives. We've never really got over the financial crisis, and so it's not surprising that people are looking for alternatives. The thing that really concerns me, though, is that we've seen this pattern play out in history. You've seen parties come in, try to scapegoat immigrants, try to give different narratives, try to give the idea that the solutions are easy, and it always ends in tears.
I mean, perhaps the answer is, frankly, in something you just said there, scapegoating immigrants. I mean, is talking about immigrants, the unacceptable nature of people who shouldn't be in a country being here, the huge expense, even if you have a sympathy, all of those things, is that scapegoating, or is that just telling it like it is?
Well, of course it's scapegoating, because as we talked about a moment ago, the big catalyst for the way that we all feel, the reason that we're no richer at the moment, is the global financial crisis, which was created by bankers, by elites. And look, I don't usually use language like that, but what we can't do is park that at the door of people who are fleeing war zones or people who are simply moving here for a better life, whether legally or illegally. Those two things just don't add up at all. And there are many people in politics who want to point to those people and want to say that it's all all their fault.
But they're separate issues, though, aren't they? Yeah, they're separate issues. Obviously,
exactly.
what happened in the States and subprime and all the rest of it, 08, you know, it collapsed, and the globe felt it. For some reason, we have felt it more than many others. GDP down the pan, etc. Despite we dine out on this, we're the 7th largest economy, but we've had no growth pretty much for 20 years. So you're right to point that out. And Labour came in, of course, on this big promise of growth. And I know there are other things that need discussing. Growth hasn't happened. We've seen all sorts of things go up in price. And at the same time, a government that's willing to spend £6 million a day on illegal immigrants. Now, that's not to... I don't say that sentence, Sebastian, to inflame it. I say it as a matter of fact. If I didn't say it in a dissertation, I'd be kicked out of university for crimes of omission. I mean, it's a fact, and that's where we're at. People are grumpy.
But put that in context, though, Ian, it's 0.5% of everything the government spends its money on. So that's asylum spending in total. It's teeny weeny. So if you're talking about where the government's spending its money, you want to look at the big budget issues and you want to ask where growth is coming from. The asylum seekers coming into Britain have absolutely nothing to do with that. And it's really wrong to try and conflate those two things. I don't think you're doing it, but there are politicians out there who are.
Yeah, but I don't think it is, because if you look at what the costs are, and of course you can then add on to the costs, the going forward costs with things like healthcare, you can look at, we talked about universal credit yesterday, foreign-born nationals, £12 billion a year. Now, a foreign-born national might well be a French bloke that's lived here for 35 years and paid a gazillion pounds in tax. So I understand that, but even if you take that group out, many of the others may well be a Frenchman that came over, or a Spaniard, or from wherever, and just overstayed their student visa and somehow managed to get a leg in. You know, we've got lots of little areas where we sense that spending is out of control.
When you move here, you have no recourse to public funds until you get indefinite leave to remain. So you can't just move.
No, but if you were part of the EU settlement scheme, you would be okay. You'd be.
But then you've been here for 5-10 years.
Well, you might not have been. You might not have been. You could have found exemptions in various other ways.
Cut-off was in 2020, so you have to have been here for at least 6 years. The point I'm making is people aren't just coming over here and living a life on benefits. That is impossible to do.
Yeah, I know it's not easy. I don't dispute that, but I don't think that is necessarily the answer to the wider question.
But again, look at what we're doing. We're focusing on immigrants, whether legal or illegal, whereas the reality is we've got no growth. Focus on that. Demand of your politicians, where is that growth?
I agree.
It's not easy to do, but that is the challenge.
I absolutely agree that I think there are many other issues as well that sometimes get relegated, even though they could be the answer to what we want. On those points, though, Sebastian, we don't have answers from this government. There is no growth. There's no grand plan. We can't quite work out even whether that front bench is very business friendly, to be honest. They seem to like a bit of tax rising when they've got a few moments. So there isn't really a sense that maybe these are the people to make that happen and to take us forward in a positive way where growth becomes a thing again and we can recognise it and enjoy it.
Yeah, look, I think the question you have to ask yourself is what would you reasonably have expected a government to have done by now? We're less than 2 years in. Would any government of any colour have turned this around completely and we're living in a land of milk and honey where growth is abundant? I just can't see that from anybody. You have to think of this in term-long blocks, 4 or 5 year blocks. If we're sitting here again in 2028 or 2029 and growth has been flat for 4 or 5 years, I'm going to be singing a very different tune because I will be deeply disappointed. But you also have to look at the external factors as well. We've got this horrible conflict playing out between the US and Iran, which is impacting all of us, whether we're trying to fill up our shopping basket or fill up our car. And there have been other issues like Russia as well. So not all of it is within the gift of a British Chancellor.
Well, you'll have joined Reform by then, won't you, Sebastian?
No chance.
You never know. Listen, great to have you on as ever. Thank you. Good luck with everything, Sebastian Salick. He's a broadcaster and former Labour councillor. He decided not to restand this election. Thank you to him. 0344 499 1000. David says, is this phase 3 of Starmer's grand plan? The phase 3 was to lose spectacularly and then have a reset. I don't know what he's going to do. If Rayner or Streeting pounce this week, the moment any one of them pounces, the Andy Burnham story, the moment that happens, that's it. He's done. OK. Will just be a case of how long he stays on as interim leader. But Burnham's journey is obviously trickier because he's not even an MP just yet, so that would take weeks to put into place. Whereas Rayner or Streeting could pounce tomorrow if they wanted to. Apparently they both have enough names of support to make that happen. 0344 499 1000. We're going to speak to Dr. David Bull shortly from Reform UK. He's the chairman. We'll find out what his response is to what is, by any measure, objectively, an incredible night for Nigel Farage's party. 12 minutes after 3, this is Talk.
That it's all you're amazing.
Right. Paul White! Sir Lenny Henry!
I was face down and the dog sniffed my crotch. It was very, very embarrassing.
Staying out for the summer.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
There's one from John in Lincolnshire who says, I think the results give Reform a chance to discover potential MPs for the general election, but just as the Greens found out in Brighton and Hove at the previous council elections, you can get booted out if you mess up. I think the public are in for a nasty shock with some of the new councils on both sides of the spectrum. Starmer, he's going to drag the party into the next election as no one likes the alternatives. That will be interesting if he does that. Was it Richmond that's just completely Lib Dem? I think it was Richmond that's just, there's no other councillors, just one party running it, which is kind of curious. Leafy, rich Richmond, and they love a Lib Dem over there. I mean, half of me is not surprised, but another half of me wants to cry. Extraordinary. Let's get a word from Dr. David Bull. He is the chairman of Reform UK. David, good afternoon to you and congratulations.
Well, thank you very much, Ian. As you can tell, I don't really know what day it is. I've been doing these interviews since 10 o'clock last night. Look, it's amazing. When I left talkTV, which was 10 months ago, amazingly, I promised that I would...
Have you noticed the listeners have gone up?
No, that's a very good comment. I hear they're desperate for me to come back.
Every day of the week, you know you're welcome back at this parish, that's for sure.
Thank you very much. Sorry, the sun's now beaming through. This is a sign of the heavens. Look, you know, I promised to professionalise the party. I said that we would mean business, and that is pretty much what we've done. I have spent the last 10 months dragging myself around the country. I've seen 30,000 people in village halls, working men's clubs, in cinemas, in restaurants. I've given speeches. You know, this is traditional politics, isn't it? It's so politics. That's how you build a party. Not like some of these other parties that sit there in London and dictate how people should feel. And so those other parties are looking at us saying, well, how did you do it? Well, the answer is that we started early. We talked to people in those constituencies, found out what they were worried about, and professionalised the structure. I mean, these results are absolutely extraordinary. At 10 o'clock last night, I said, I would be happy with winning 1,000 councillors. Now we're on over 700, I think, at the moment. I think, given the nature of the results, I think we could have more than that, actually. We could have 1,200. I don't want to kind of second guess this. But there are some fascinating things going on. We have just won Suffolk. That is my home county. Now, Suffolk is traditionally and tribally a Conservative, very strong Conservative seat. So the idea that we have taken control of Suffolk County Council is absolutely extraordinary. Essex, of course, we've taken control of, and Havering and Newcastle under Lyme as well. There is something else going on as well. We have absolutely smashed Labour out of the red wall. They are in serious trouble in Wigan, Hartlepool, Redditch, Thameside. And the Tories, I don't think enough commentators are talking about how badly the Tories are doing. The Tories are consigned to a footnote in political history.
Did you see Kemi Badenoch's response was as if she'd just become the Prime Minister? She was cheering and she had the crowd behind her, and I wondered if I was watching an old clip of something and we'd mistakenly played the wrong thing. She's saying, oh, no, it's the signs of renewal, she said, David.
Where?
Well, I did rather wonder that myself.
Well, I mean, also... The thing is, Ian, I was watching her the other day and they were talking about they were essentially quoting the Reform UK playbook and saying what they're going to do on immigration. And I want to ask them, you were in power for 14 years. 200,000 people have come here illegally to this country since 2018. You were in charge. You did absolutely nothing about it. So don't come here and expect the electorate to believe you, because they don't. And the one thing that I would say about my experience, and I'm probably the closer on the ground than pretty much anyone, maybe not Nigel, but certainly I understand what people are saying. We are not the Tory Party 2.0. We are seeing people coming to us from Labour, working people. We are seeing people, 40% of our voters did not go to university. We also have 60% of our voters are young. So both sides of the age spectrum, the older people are saying, I don't recognise the country. And the young people are saying, there is no future for me in this country. And if you look at what Labour has done, and on the doorstep, I was talking about potholes and things that matter like bins and council tax. But actually, that's not what people want to talk about. They want to talk about a rudderless Labour government that has completely shafted everyone, including small businesses. As you know, 2 pubs a day closing. They're the lifeblood of any village, and we need to keep those open. They're talking about the 11,000 non-doms leaving the country. They've attacked the farmers. Do they know, these Islington types, know where food comes from? It comes from British farms. They've given away the fish, 12 years of fishing rights, which we fought really hard to maintain when we stood and had Brexit and got out of the European Union. I mean, the country is in free fall. You've got really strong trade unions, and Labour is sort of sticking its head in the sand, got cheese in its ears. And I don't think, having been on television with David Lammy overnight, I don't think he understands what's going on in the country.
Do you think there's a danger in some of this, though? Not of your making, David, but winning a council seat is fantastic, and well done to all of those men and women that diligently campaign, pounding the streets, giving out leaflets, and like yourself as well, working damn hard on this campaign. County councillors, I mean, it's an incredible result, but of course we know that there are limitations in local government. Kent County Council, where I know quite a few of the players down there, including the leader, that it's difficult, it's hard to make substantial differences. Is the barrier that reform will come up against, and it would be the same for anybody, that tangible reform is quite hard to achieve if you're not the actual government? So you can be there in numbers, but if the potholes are still there and the bins are still a bit iffy and you're not seeing seismic change across the channel, not that you could do anything about that anyway, there will be a sense in some people's minds that we voted reform and nothing's changed.
Well, yeah, right. Certainly in Derbyshire, we've cleared 17,500 backlog of potholes. So that is delivering in Derbyshire. That's what people want to see. We've identified £700 million worth of savings in our councils. Now, you mentioned Kent, run by Lyndon Kemcaran.
Yeah.
Kent was an absolute basket case. We inherited £750 million worth in debt. Now, we've identified 67 million quid already. We've made those savings. So the first thing we did is we put that money straight into potholes, because that is what people see when your car goes into a pothole and you then have to fork out hundreds of pounds worth in terms of damage to your car. So these are real life examples. We are growing and learning. The one thing I would say to you is that, back in the day when we were colleagues on Talk, we've gone from almost like a protest party. That's how people saw us, if you remember. We then were a challenger brand. We were then an SME. We're now a multinational. And so that rise, and it is worth just remembering, Ian, we are only 4 years old. Look what we achieved in 4 years. Now, that general election can't come soon enough, as far as I can see. I think Keir Starmer is in very dangerous territory. I think the Tory party are in serious trouble as well. I honestly think we're entering a new era of politics. The two-party system is dead and buried. And I think the British people are saying we need something different. We need to put Britain first. To sort out the elephant in the room, which is immigration. The fact is that no government has sorted that out. It's simply unfair. We're hoteling people. We're looking after illegal immigrants better than we look after our veterans who've served in the forces. That's absolutely unacceptable, and it will stop under a Reform UK government.
Yeah, and it's not all good news, though. You didn't win the Mayor of Hackney job. I'm not even sure if you bothered to put anybody up there. But I noticed the Green Party did.
Yeah, I mean, look, there will be areas of this country where we do very well. But again, what I find fascinating is that Labour has always relied on that red wall, and then Boris Johnson took that red wall. We are now taking the red wall, but we're also taking the estuary. We're taking and Essex and the outer donut of London. So people say to me, oh, well, you're only a geographic party. You only appeal to certain people. That is simply not true. Let's look also at Wales. In the last election, we polled at 1% in Wales. And now the polling puts us ahead. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in Wales, but certainly it looks like we've done very well in Wales. In Scotland, again, we were polling at around 1%. And the rise in Scotland has been meteoric. So we are the only party that truly believes in the union, that truly has a presence in all of those constituent countries. And so if people believe in the United Kingdom, as I do, then there is only one party to vote for.
I was about to ask you about Wales. It's apparently Labour have already kind of pretty much rolled over and said, we've lost. I don't know why they would have made any statement like that, given that I think there's only one result come through so far in Wales. But certainly when you're in a battle, and this goes back, David, to what you were saying about the changing face of politics, the conversation, the debate around who runs Wales is, will it be Plaid Cymru, will it be Reform UK? I mean, an unthinkable conversation 48 months ago.
Yeah, 100%. And it's been amazing for me. When I first went to Wales, I was greeted with sort of just a sense of utter joy. When you look at what has happened in those constituent countries, and they're very similar in many ways. The poverty, the deprivation. When you look at the NHS in both Wales and Scotland, which are devolved matters, they are absolutely shambolic. In Scotland, drug deaths, alcohol deaths, the outcomes, the morbidity in Scotland is just off the scale. And the SNP has singularly failed Scottish people. Now, I don't really understand how the SNP think that they have a right to govern. And of course, what they're going to do is they'll deflect everything and say we need a second independence referendum. Well, I suggest what you do is you stick to the day job and sort out the prospects for Scottish people.
Yeah, indeed. You were a doctor back in the day, David. I am one of the few people that has had the pleasure of actually seeing your stethoscope. If you were to if you were to use that, following that analogy or metaphor, the pulse of the nation, what is it looking like right now in terms of going forward over the next couple of years? Because, of course, Reform have got their foot on the gas. The key is to not take it off.
It is. And also it's to show delivery in those councils that we control. Just in terms of that, Nigel said a long time ago to me that he views these elections a bit like the American midterms. Now, that's an expression we wouldn't normally use.
Yeah.
But what was clear, he was right. And so this is really telling us the direction of travel. We have long said that if we win these local elections, we will go on to win the next general election. Nigel will become the next British Prime Minister. But also, we will then correct all of these things that I know talkTV viewers are so exercised about, which is actually putting British people first. It is about getting rid of the illegal migrants. It's actually about leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, which allows people to stay in this country because they don't like the chicken McNuggets. All of this, utterly ridiculous. It all has to go. And if you come to this country and if you contribute, then fine. But if you don't and you come here illegally, you will be deported.
And I don't think there's anything controversial about that, but that is, of course, the terms of conversations over the years has been that someone saying that, what you've just said, the left would go, well, you can't say stuff like that. There is literally nothing odd, controversial or weird about what you've just said, and yet that's the kind of card that we've had Labour people tell us this afternoon. Natalie Bennett, we had her on from the Green Party. She pretty much said the same thing. Divisive talk about immigration. It's not divisive, it's honest.
Well, I mean, it's brilliant, isn't it? So the Green Party are kicking off because we said that we are going to build asylum centres in constituencies run by the Green Party. Now, suddenly they don't want those asylum centres, do they? So the point we were trying to make is that actually your actions have consequences. A lot of these people who vote Green, I think, don't really understand what the Green Party is. It's not a cuddly, friendly party. It is an uberly left-wing party. It is a party of the metropolitan elite who can afford to vote Green. You talk to any tradesperson in this country. These are the people who work hard, who set their alarms in the morning. They are sick and tired of not having money at the end of the day. The price of beer is far too high. They can't put food on the table. They're not worried about the going to net zero. What they want is cheap energy, and that's why we'll crack and remove our oil and gas and make sure that energy prices come down, inflation comes down, and we will be on the side of British business.
Bang on. David, great to see you again, as ever. Enjoy the rest of the day. I'm sure that glass of wine is only a couple of hours away. David Bull, Dr. David Bull, he is the chairman, of course, of Reform UK. Good to see him again, and, of course, formerly of this parish. Louise is in Reform County of Kent. Louise, good afternoon.
Yes, hi.
Hi.
I think this is all quite fascinating. I've always said that the council elections, these councils like Kent, will be the testing ground for whether Reform can cut it at the other end, whether they'll actually manage to make it into government. Because if they've got 3 years. If they can do something in that time and show with these councils that they can get somewhere, that'll be different. So I think there's that element. I don't like what he said about Kemi. I actually feel that the Conservatives, they may not be quite turning around yet, but I think there are whispers, and I think it's partly Kemi, and I do feel that she will clear out and get her party in order. I think she's got the strength to do that.
Yeah.
And I really see that. I love what she says and does. And actually, I'm afraid I think she's the brains out of all the leaders. I think she's very...
Well, that could be her... You know, I used the analogy earlier that there may well be a point where if things crack or go a little wobbly for Reform or the Greens or whoever, it's possible that coming through the middle could be Kemi Badenoch, who's seen as the kind of the adult in the room, if that's the best way to describe it.
I tell you what I liken it to.
Yeah.
That Aesop fable, the tortoise and the hare.
I thought it was the hare and the tortoise.
Well, the hare and the tortoise, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, because what happens is you've got the hare rushing ahead, and everybody thinks the tortoise is not going to get anywhere, and of course then it comes through. I think that's interesting. A couple of other interesting things.
Yeah, briefly if you can, Louise, because we've got a Tory MP coming in a sec.
Yeah, well, brilliant. Starmer, I'm afraid, is shooting himself in the foot with Brexit, because all the ones that have come through with Reform are those Brexit places.
Sure.
The other thing I think is absolutely fascinating. Before all this, we were hearing about the independents and the worry about them in Birmingham.
Sure.
But I understand it looks like Birmingham is going to be taken by Reform. And if that happens, there'll be real trouble. The other thing is, I think Greens, I don't think they'll be in existence by the next election. I think everything about them will be exposed. I pity poor Oxford. They'll be the first 15-minute city in the country.
Yeah, and at this rate, the last. Listen, Louise, thank you. Have a lovely weekend. Let's hope the sun keeps shining. That's Louise down in Kent. Matt Vickers is the Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party, Tory MP. He's with us next to give us the Tory position on all of this. He will counter, I'm sure, much of what you heard David Bull say. Find out what Matt Vickers has to say next on Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
And welcome back. 25 to 4 here at the Home of Common Sense. Matt Vickers, MP, is with us, Conservative Party Deputy Chairman. Matt, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Nice to see you. So I'm trying to work this out. So Conservatives 360, I think. That's down 321. Kemi Badenoch said there are signs of life in the... She didn't actually say the signs of life in the... signs of renewal. I think that wouldn't have been the right thing to say if she'd said that. But the signs of renewal. What do you think she meant by that? Bearing in mind you've kind of still taken a bit of a kicking.
Well, we're not fooling ourselves into thinking, you know, all is good in the hood.
Yeah.
It's a difficult set of elections. We got a good kicking in the last general election. We're now, some of these county council elections that we've had overnight actually were last held in 2021 when we were on 43% of the vote. So it was never going to be rosy. It was always going to be a challenge. But actually we've made progress in certain places. Places where people thought Reform was going to mop up. Bexley.
Yeah.
We had Fareham, we had various places. Bromley, I think, sounds like it's going to be okay. Lots of places where Reform aren't doing what they did last year. We're doing significantly better than last year. It's still not great, but we're making progress, and that's because people are getting to hear from Kemi. They're getting to hear what she's about. They quite like her, actually. That's the sounds I got from the doorstep.
Isn't that, I know we've talked about this before, but it's kind of tough, isn't it, for when you're kind of trying to beat a party, now Reform. And it's curious, even that sentence, I've only been there 4 years, and it's a case of trying to beat Reform. And you're the Conservative Party, I think the oldest political party on planet Earth, I think I'm right in saying, more or less. What can you actually do? Because a lot of the stuff that is attractive to voters who would have been Conservative voters are finding that their needs have been met by Nigel Farage. So why would they leave that? And bearing in mind, he's got a clean sheet here because he can't, no one can say, well, you were in power for 14 years. So he's got it all going on. He's sitting at the top of the table enjoying the buffet, the banquet, as it were. And you guys are having to run around going, oh, we've got a policy. And they're going, no, we've already got it.
I think so. It's a legitimate point. I think, actually, it's really easy to be shiny, new and different.
Yeah.
The reality is we've got a good chunk of Liz Truss's cabinet in there. They've got former, they have a former Home Secretary, they have a former Immigration Minister who now wear a different sort of rosette, and all of a sudden it's great and all is forgiven. Actually, Kemi's been very realistic. At times I wasn't sure it was right, but she said that we're going to dust ourselves down. We're under new management, and she's gone away and she didn't just start punching out cheap back of a fag packet ideas. She's done the thinking. She came forward. She didn't just say, oh yeah, we're going to deport people. No, she's come forward with real papers, real considerations about how we remove people, how we need to leave the ECHR, why we need to leave the ECHR, and why we do it to get hold on immigration. But the big dividing line is actually about economic competence. It's about being the people who are on the side of people who work hard and do the right thing. You can only do that if you balance the nation's finances, if you start reducing welfare, if you start deciding, instead of just promising everybody everything on earth. The British public aren't stupid. They know if you promise them something, they've got to pay for it sooner or later. Kemi tells you how she's going to pay for it.
We just talked to David Bull, the Reform chairman. He was saying that there's a lot of working class people who didn't go to universities. I think he said 40% of their voters are of that demographic. 60% are young. I would imagine he means sort of under 40 in that sense. So the other problem the Tories might have is that your electorate are older, and I don't want to be cruel and say they might die, because we all might do that. But is there a demographic issue, a serious conversation about what that's like, and getting people from other parts of the country that are going Reform, which would typically have been Labour, they had a little dalliance with Boris under the Tories, and working class people, they're again the Reform have kind of hoovered up those territories as well.
They used to say, didn't they, you might vote Labour or Green even when you were younger, and then you learn a little bit about the world, you grow a bit more sense, and you start voting for the Conservative Party, which I think probably has a bit of logic. But actually, I don't think it is about putting people in buckets based on their social class or their geography. What we are pitching is to be on the side of people who work hard and do the right thing. At the minute, this Labour government is not there. If you work hard, the more you work, the more you pay in tax. If you don't work, you get more and more in benefits. And actually, Reform in that space are in a different place to us. You've heard with their own internal debates, apparently, about whether or not the two-child cap goes. We just believe that you need to reduce this. Welfare is there to help people when they're stuck, when they lose their job, when they have tough times or they're disabled. It's not there as a life choice. It needs to be, we need to have robust measures in place. We need to reduce the spend on welfare, so the people who work hard and do the right thing, the ones who get up early in the morning and go to work, who create jobs, who contribute to the economy, who pay for all the public services, get to keep a little bit more of their money. And I think that's the big dividing line as we go forwards.
We have had, a fair amount of calls and comments this afternoon. I've made the point myself that, there could be, Reform are newish, and many of these councils could struggle with the events that perhaps are even beyond their control, but they'll get the blame for it nonetheless. Labour will be in chaos as a national party, the government in chaos, whoever is running it. There is a chance Kemi can sort of see that gap in the middle come through as the phrase I keep using is the adult in the room, as it were. Is that the plan when you sit around the Rose and Crown, the Tory front bench, or wherever it is you go, for a swift pint and working out what our to-do list is going to look like for the next couple of years? What is there? What is it you're trying to do?
So
who are you trying to enamour or
Two
gain?
big points are up there. It's about reform councils and what they actually do on the ground.
I think your microphone has fallen
You've
down.
lost it.
Sorry, I lost mine earlier.
I'm there.
All the cool kids are doing it.
I think actually the big difference, lots of people who got reform councils aren't very happy with them now. They've lost about 70 of their own councillors in a year. We ended up in a situation, actually there was a reform council who said it was going to find a way to save £1 million, and it spent 1.4 million getting external people in to tell them how to do it. They told people they're going to cut tax, yet actually one of the highest, well, the highest council tax increase in the country came from a reform council. A lot of these reform councils on the ground aren't doing what they promised with people, and people are getting very disappointed. And I think the other problem about the psychodrama of politics now, and about the fact that Keir Starmer wakes up every single morning wondering how he's going to hold on to the keys to number 10, is actually very damaging for the country. You should be worrying about the cost of living. You should be worrying about how we start drilling North Sea oil and gas. You should be worrying about crime figures, about the fact that shoplifting's out of control, that we've got less police on the streets, and instead all he's doing is trying to appease Labour MPs so he can remain as Prime Minister. That has real consequences. I think for us, we've got to tell people, well, what people already know at home, that we are the party of fiscal responsibility. We are going to make sure that the country pays its way, and that those people who work hard and do the right thing would be better off with the Conservatives.
Zach Polanski, I always want to smile when I say Zach Polanski. I don't mean with joy, arguably with horror possibly. But Zach Polanski is claiming that it's the end of two-party politics, that it's the Greens over there, Reform over there, you guys, Labour, your legacy parties, as they're now using that rather annoying phrase. So now it's between the Greens. Now, the Greens, I did put this point to Natalie Bennett earlier. They've done kind of all right. They're up 96 seats as we sit here. I can remember a time when I because being somebody who was into politics, looking at the German elections years ago, they elected a Green politician. I had to look it up, what this meant, a Green party. We didn't have that thing over here. So they're also relatively new on the scene and making big inroads. So is it them versus Reform, and you and the Lib Dems and Labour are kind of the outriders?
I don't think so at all.
Don't forget us, everybody.
In fact, when you look at the numbers, I don't think that's quite bringing itself out. But the problem with the Greens, actually, is that people think that these cuddly environmentalists, don't they? They don't realise that Hypnotits and his crowd actually have ridiculous ideas and are very dangerous people. They believe in legalising drugs. They believe in allowing brothels and sex workers to set up shop in the high street. They believe they oppose our nuclear deterrent. These are really dangerous people with real consequences. They aren't cuddly, fluffy people who are going to look after green space.
And an anti-Semitism problem in their party.
A huge anti-Semitism problem.
But they are nonetheless making inroads, and we can scratch our heads on that all we like. I saw some very posh girl getting arrested on social media who was crying out, we need Green Party and it's terrible what's going on. And we've got she shouted, we've got 156 billionaires in this country. How bad is that? And I'm thinking, can we have double that? Because that would be great. Why is that a bad thing?
Well, the problem is...
But that was the sort of mentality,
Well, we've got significantly less of them than we had not so long ago. One of the biggest problems we've got economically now is the fact that anybody who works hard, does the right thing, who creates jobs, who creates tax revenues that can fund our public services, is fleeing the country, or their business is going to the wall. Nearly 18% more people are unemployed in the country, and the people who are losing out most is the young people, the next generation. Record low levels of graduate recruitment.
What's the pressure now on from a Conservative perspective on Keir Starmer? Because he said today, I'm not going anywhere. Spoiler alert, Keir. Yes, you are, whether you like it or not. But of course, the Labour government are not going anywhere. They might change the head, but he will still be there. I thought the Conservatives did a good job on the Peter Mandelson stuff, keeping it going, and arguably, perhaps Kemi Badenoch's star rose during that period. And it's more of that. So you guys have really got to keep up the pressure and the momentum, haven't you?
So
if Keir goes, you've almost got to claim the scalp.
I think some of the fracturing that you see, some of the challenges that Kemi, because Kemi actually is a very, very fiery woman, a lot of backbone. She's willing to say what needs to be said, even if it's not popular, you might not always agree with with her, but you know what it is she stands for. She does a great job in standing up for our veterans, our Northern Ireland veterans. She's getting so stuck into that. She held the government to account over the grooming gang scandal. She kicked them all over the cuts to winter fuel. She's getting stuck in. She's making some difference. But one of the problems, actually, we talk about Keir Starmer is obviously going. I'm not as convinced he's going to go as quickly as we might think, because those MPs, those Labour MPs who arrived, shiny new, enthusiastic people who believed in the Labour Party, they were willing to walk through a lobby and vote to take people's winter fuel payments. They were willing to walk through a lobby opposing a grooming gang scandal. They were willing to walk through a lobby and oppose the protections put in place for our Northern Ireland veterans. If you're willing to do that, are you that fussed about getting rid of the Prime Minister? They've already shown zero backbone, zero ethics.
Yeah, it's not going to be dull in your workplace, is it, in the next few weeks?
Fun few months ahead.
Popcorn at the ready. Matt, good to see you again. Matt Vickers with us, Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party and, of course, Conservative MP. Thank you to him. Back to you in a couple of moments. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
It just so happens that it's all you're amazing.
Right. Paul White! Sir Lenny Henry!
I was face down and the dog sniffed my crotch. It was very, very embarrassing.
Staying out for the summer.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Just gone 10 to 4. Kevin O'Sullivan's here after 4. He'll nip in and tell us a little bit more about it. Chris says, Ian, Matt Vickers, they had 14 years. And we don't want them back ever, like Labour. Both abused this country between them for years. Now they are finished. And Kath made, not unreasonably, an unreasonable point. He says, can you tell David Ball off like he told me off? 14 years of the Tories. Yeah, because Kath the other day said that they messed it up for 14. I didn't notice, actually, that David Ball said the same thing, but he probably did. Because it's the thing now, isn't it? 14 years. I would actually say we've had 25 years of grief. But I don't think the Tories, at the time, the Tories, remember, they won a load of elections in those 14 years. I think you can break it down and probably come to the conclusion that the last 3 or 4 were the real stinkers. They did give us a Brexit vote, of course. Not that they thought it was going to go that way, but they did. This is Grace down in London. Grace, what have you got for us? Afternoon.
Hi. I voted against the Labour Party for the first time.
Mm-hmm. You went full on reform, didn't you, Grace? I know what you did.
No, I'm afraid I didn't. I was not quite sure which party to vote for in our local area, and ultimately it didn't matter because none of our seats changed. I have disagreements with all of the parties, and I'm kind of voting for the lesser evil. Actually, in previous local elections, council elections, I've just abstained because I had been a Labour voter more generally, but because our area had the first buffer zone around an abortion clinic, and we heard on the programme yesterday evening about someone who's just been prosecuted for sharing the verse that's not even about abortion, from John 3:16, that Jesus came for us, basically, that verse being shared by a preacher outside an abortion clinic, and he was prosecuted, even though he wasn't talking about abortion. But we had the first buffer zone here in our local area, and therefore I have not been supporting our Labour council here in Ealing, though I had voted for...
Because of your strong feelings against abortion, you believe that buffer zones are an affront to people with your views being able to articulate them.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like I've not gone and stood outside an abortion clinic myself.
No, I can imagine, but I understand what you're saying.
I felt like I couldn't support the councillors in our local area who were so supportive of abortion that they input that. But anyway, I think that I'm really going off to the tangent. I apologise. I think that reform are mistaken in suggesting that they can fix so many of the country's problems as they suggest they can by stopping immigration. You mentioned billionaires a moment ago, and the wealth of billionaires in our country combined is the best part of 200 billion. Now, that's not just money that they've made, that is wealth from our economy that they have accumulated through the labour of people lower down the pay scale.
Well, I mean, you could say that, but I mean, people aren't poor because they are rich.
Well, just small.
I mean, Andy Murray is a mega millionaire. Now, that's because loads of people watched him play tennis and organisations sponsored him. He's not, he hasn't made anybody poor because he's a millionaire.
Well, no, but his money will come from less wealthy people paying money to corporations that put matches on the television, and so people have to pay to watch.
But what do you do with that, though? How would you address that? I mean, if you literally set out to say, right, I want to equal this up. Here's James Dyson, the bloke that makes the vacuums. Here's Andy Murray. Here's Weatherspoon's boy. Let's get all these people together. We're going to make Madge, Joe and Bob rich out of something these guys have done. What would be the first move?
I think you probably have to strategy that depended slightly on the sectors that we were referring to and how they had acquired all those. But my point is that the amount of money that's being spent on keeping migrants in hotels, and I agree that they shouldn't be there and people shouldn't come here if they've got no right to come, but the amount that's being spent on that is really small in comparison to the amount of wealth that billionaires have managed to accumulate. So we're not going to solve...
But are they really the same thing?
They're not they're not the same thing, but the point is that you can't say we're going to make everyone in the country better off in terms of living costs and sharing out Britain's resources if we stop people coming across in small boats, when actually much more of the country's wealth is in the pockets of super rich people. Again, I'm not saying that people should come across in small boats.
But it's not other taxpayers' money, is it? It's private money.
Well, it kind of is.
Well, it's not government. It doesn't come from the government just because somebody buys a product. If I buy a pint in Wetherspoons, that we can't say, well, the government are giving away the money. I've given it to, what's his name, Tim, name escapes me. I've given it to the Wetherspoons owner, but the government haven't given it to him.
Yeah, but you're still having to pay money for things because of, and ultimately the money's ending up in the pockets of people who don't need more money. I'm simply trying to point out that Reform seem to want to think that if we can stop people coming across in small boats, then we're going to resolve lots of problems regarding the cost of living. And I don't think that mathematically...
Well, I don't know whether that is their central argument on immigration. I think their central argument is a couple of fold. Number one, it's symbolic of a government out of control when you can have 50,000 people a year just come into a country. I'm not suggesting they live it up royally, because they don't. The max you could ever get is about 39 quid a week. You'd still struggle to work, even if you did. You can't work at the moment. You might have a few do moody Deliveroo jobs. But so I don't think it's that. I think there's a social cohesion issue and what it benchmarks about where we're at as a country. And it feels to many, understandably, that if people can float across the channel on a rubber boat, then that is a country that is out of control. And a country should be unapologetically proud of a tough migration system and tough borders. It's what Jesus would have wanted, Grace.
No.
I'm telling you now.
No, Jesus did not say anything like that. I mean,
I think if Jesus was around today, I'm not trying to, as a Christian myself, I'm not trying to be cheap here. If Jesus was around today, he'd be working for Border Force at Dover.
No, he wouldn't. Jesus ultimately made the point that each of us has things that we need to repent of, very much including myself. And we can't kind of fix the world just by keeping other people out, because we ourselves also have things that we need to address. Okay. And he told us that we should be loving others and not just pointing fingers at them.
I do understand that. I do understand. There are some Christians, of course, who would part company with some of that. Listen, Grace, thank you very much indeed. That is Grace down in London. Kevin O'Sullivan is here. Kevin, you just walked in with a big bag. I thought for a second...
It's not a big bag, it's my briefcase.
Well, out of the corner of my eye, I thought it was like a ventriloquist dummy you had with you. I thought it was
going to be doing the show.
Like a new act you've got going on. Yeah.
No, by the way, I worked out why I was shouting yesterday.
Yeah.
So I put these in, but I don't plug them in, so I couldn't really hear you. So I was shouting.
Is that why you were shouting?
That's why I was shouting.
I see.
So I'll probably do it again.
What's going on? That's all right.
Well, obviously, we're going to just be analysing this extraordinary